Good news, everyone! Talking Futurama is coming back for Talking Futurama Season 2, Part 2.
Fresher than a summer ham, this podcast comes every Friday. And if you sign up at the $5 level at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, you can hear each episode as it goes live.
That's right, sign up today at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons for $5 to hear Talking Futurama every Friday throughout the rest of 2020 and also all the previous episodes we've done so far.
So head over to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons now, or we're going to clamp you.
Shut up and take my money.
Cartoons from present in the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, recorded in a brass factory only on rainy days. I'm one of your hosts, the Sugar Crash Marshal, Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today?
Hey, it's Henry Gilbert, and I am also holding myself up to the impossible standards of TMS animation.
And today's episode is all about the Animaniacs 2020 episode, Episode 8.
Don't get smart with me!
I couldn't if I wanted to.
Yes, despite all the bad things that happened in 2020, we now have the return of the duh idiots, which I have lamented over the past 2 decades.
I wondered how much Ralph's in it more than I thought he'd be.
Yeah.
Definitely more than his old co-stars. But that he gets to say duh as his first word in the show.
It's curious. He was one of the few that was not executed before this reboot. But
it might be our last chance to appreciate every duh while you can, folks.
Treasure all the does. But yes, normally because of the pandemic, we're recording like things for, March and February and April. But now we're only like a week behind the posting of this episode because we wanted to get this to you hot off the presses, our hottest immediate takes on this Animaniacs 2020 reboot. But first, so we have done an episode about the original Animaniacs. Check that out in the What a Cartoon feed. But in case you didn't hear that or need a refresher, up front, I want to talk about what our experience with the original show is. Henry, quickly, what is your fondness for original Animaniacs?
I loved it as an 11-year-old when it premiered. I had already enjoyed Tiny Toons so much, and Animaniacs was like the leveling up of that in meta humor and silliness, and I just loved it. I watched it every single day. Every time there was a new episode. When they moved to Kids WB, I followed them to there. And I just only have fond memories for Animaniacs. I mean, definitely some sketches were better than others, but when the show was good, I really loved it.
Yeah, me too. I was there day one, graduated from Tiny Toons to Animaniacs, watched all the original run, watched most of the Kids WB run, and had a great fondness for the show. And this is all brought to us by, of course, Steven Spielberg, which he didn't start the animation renaissance in the 90s. Disney started it, but he really gave us a different flavor. It'd be interesting if he brought that same level of quality back, like for a second renaissance in the 2020s.
Yeah.
30 years later.
In the 90s, he sparked this like arms race and also like just brought up, thanks to his demands of what he wanted in his cartoons and him being able to demand a budget just through clout that other people couldn't. I'm thinking, that is kind of similar to what this new Animaniacs was able to do comparatively to most other animation. I mean, Hulu original animation, especially that Seth Meyers show from 4 years ago, like that's not a cartoon.
Yes. I will say that we're going to go over all of our initial thoughts of this entire season. We both watched the entire season, although we're going to focus on one episode. But I will say, despite the fact that it looks differently and it moves differently, this is a very pretty and expensive series. And I think throughout these podcasts, I've been lamenting when can we get a very expensive animated series on a streaming network? Because a lot of them, especially the adult ones, are just what's Bob's Burgers doing? Let's just copy that art style. And I mean, all those people work very, very hard, but they're not given enough time to draw original poses or original animations. It's all use the things that are baked into this software and get it out as fast as possible.
Yeah. Whenever we talk about digital form animation like letting us down stylistically or wishing it was better than it appears to be. It's not saying we think animators are lazy or animators aren't talented, but like budget and time just gets stripped away as much as possible on those shows. And so I think even a talented, obviously some animators are more talented than others, but I think even the best in that digital format are going to have trouble with the kind of time frame given to most things.
And not everyone gets 2 years to make 13 episodes of a show.
Yeah. I feel like they're almost bragging about how like, oh yeah, we wrote this 2 years ago. Like, wow, you worked that long on this show? Like, yeah. But also, I mean, we've done Venture Brothers and Titmouse worked on that. Mm-hmm. Like there's, as a digital production house, Titmouse is good. And I think there's some really great like animation flourishes in it. But there were other times where I was like, couldn't they go with like a rough draft or a type of studio that still uses physical elements?
Yeah. I thought the same thing. I'm looking at all the other things that actually get this kind of treatment, like Disenchantment, and I'm thinking of things like Gravity Falls, Amphibia, things like that. I'm like, those are all very good shows, but this, with Spielberg's name attached, why couldn't you get traditional digital animation instead of the we'll call it the Flash style? Although I will say they're doing everything they can to eliminate any traces of the Flash style, although it's there. But at times it is indistinct from traditional animation.
Yeah, no, at its best, it's like, oh, wow. Like, it's same with DuckTales, that reboot from 2017, especially in the third season. And I would bet Animaniacs, as it goes on, if they get, lots more episodes, they'll refine their abilities with it. By the third season, DuckTales really looks good for that type as well. Like, I think it's one of the best in class at using those type of digital elements. But still, I go like, I wish there was some level of pencilness to this.
The shortcuts they take with this kind of animation, I think, are more apparent and more distracting than the shortcuts that were taken with earlier forms of animation. But I want to say, I really feel like, after watching the series, I think in 10 years, they'll be able to get this kind of animation to look like traditional animation without anyone noticing, really.
Yeah. And the work on this is kind of part of the leap towards that, probably. And I think the worst parts of the animation to me were that sometimes the shading, there just isn't any, and characters, especially like Pinky and the Brain, who are all white, like just look really flat without like character shading on it, which it's not that they never have it, it's more used for like dramatic purposes.
But yeah, I was watching this show the entire run, and this might sound like sacrilegious, but like across the board, it has a higher consistent quality of animation than the entire series. Like if you have memories of Animaniacs and you have not watched them recently, you are remembering the TMS stuff, the best looking stuff, because if you go back to clips, look at like a mushy ACOM episode or the Freelance Studios episodes, the ACOM ones are just sort of the okay ones. Like there's a lot of fugly looking Animaniacs, a lot of mushy, sloppy Animaniacs. The TMS ones are the best, and we'll talk about, they're mimicking that style. We'll talk more about it later, but yes, across the board, because they're copying the best style of the show, this has the highest level of consistency compared to the other show, the older show.
If you're remembering a good-looking one that wasn't TMS, it was probably one of like the handful of Startoons ones.
Startoons, yeah.
Other than that, they pretty much were. I think too, it was smart of them to like the old show, the opening was TMS, and I think they front-loaded the series with TMS episodes. So that is what hurts. Not hurts, but one thing I kind of wish they didn't do is that they didn't trace TMS sometimes, especially in the openings. Like that, it actually makes it stand out even more how different this is.
It's true, yeah. The opening, like I will say, up until the halfway point, I'd say like 70% of the shots are just like vector traced from the original opening. And you're right, like once you see that compared to what they can do now, you're like, oh, your animation can't be as snappy as TMS is just because of the tools you're using and the people involved and the time that you're spending on this. It's just like there's a different level of skill and tools that make it impossible to perfectly mimic the style. So yeah, it is kind of jarring.
Yeah. Like in the Pinky and the Brain opening, which is mostly original, but the opening bit of what are we going to do tonight, like seeing Pinky's run run cycle in the hamster wheel. I'm like, man, what a good run cycle
Yeah.
the TMS animated for that.
And then when they pull out of the CGI building, you're thinking like, man, I really miss when someone had to draw every frame of them pulling out of the hallways of Acme Labs. So great. Very Akira style animation.
I mean, TMS was the kings of that. There's probably not a studio that animated a Evil Dead style camera move like that than TMS did. So it's not really fair to expect other people to do it as perfectly 27 years later.
That's true. And some other things about the series up front is that they get rid of a lot of the lesser characters. And by that, I mean most of them.
It's pretty much everybody. Yeah.
Yes. Outside of one kind of cameo appearance by a character, it is basically just the Warners, Pinky and the Brain, and then in the last episode, there's Dr. Scratch and Sniff. But outside of that, everybody is not here. And that's, I feel like there's a lot of pros for that, and there's a few cons because this is an ensemble show, and it's weird that they just sort of, like we're going to keep true to the spirit of the show, but all the characters are gone. It's a weird mixed message here.
Yeah, you get it right from the beginning with the opening that goes like, and also on your cast, which was heavily focus tested, is like, but you don't have a new cast. I mean, I guess you have like 3 or 4 new recurring characters, maybe, but
yeah, some new villains, but like most of the villains on the old show were one-offs anyways.
But that's also it. This showed me that Warner's annoying someone shorts, they are good if they're like one you see if they're 10% of the Warner appearances. But when they're half of the episodes for the Warners, like Warner shorts other than this episode are the Warners annoy somebody or the Warners sing a song. Like those are the two types of Warner sketches.
And I will say, like, I do like the Warner stuff for the most part, but I think they didn't look at all of the shorts and what made them good, because so many of the Warner shorts I liked were not just like these like very heightened moments where they're fighting like a muscle man or they're fighting like a Greek god or whatever. I love the ones where it's like Dr. Scratch and Sniff bringing them into society or them having to be in a normal world with normal people. I don't see as much as that there, except in this short, which is why I wanted to talk about this one.
Yeah, you're right. This is the most this episode is the one that does that the most. Like there were the moments of them actually liking Dr. Scratch and Sniff, which I think in the Scratch and Sniff ep at the end of the season, they kind of forget that. It's not, and well, also like Scratchy just lays on a couch the whole episode. It's not really, it's a second Nils episode is what it is. It's not really a Doc episode.
I like neurotic characters, and like there's none of that to be found here. That's why I was like, give us Scratch and Sniff. He's such a great foil to the Animaniacs, because he doesn't get mad at them. He just is like, oh, and groans.
I like too that the Warners, even they bring up in one of the episodes, they're like, who are we annoying this week? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, they know they're doing it too much. In that one episode, like, I guess this is a spoiler. You should watch the whole season. I think we're gonna spoil some stuff, but the episode about all of the backup characters, what happened to them.
Yeah,
I reject the hypothesis in that episode that Chicken Boo was the most hated character. He really was.
I don't know where they're getting that from.
Yeah, like, I mean, who would? I guess people probably liked Randy Beeman Kid and
that guy
and the Skull and the
Good Idea, Bad Idea. Yeah,
but other than that, like, who really liked the hippos or the Good Feathers more than a Chicken Boo sketch?
That's
like,
true. I mean, Chicken Boo was there. He showed up and got out of the way.
Yeah, it was nice and quick, and it's a funny little sketch. I mean, I wish Slappy Squirrel was there, and I got pissed off seeing her for the 1 second. I'm glad they didn't literally kill her when she was a head on the wall, as was
everybody.
I was like, holy shit!
I'm glad that they showed those characters weren't dead. By the way, I was like, that's such a mean-spirited joke. Just like, oh, we literally murdered everyone else.
Yeah, that was too harsh. But again, Chicken Boo, I don't think he's the worst. But there's a reason Buttons and Mindy and all those characters got created. It's because they can have adventures that are different than the Warners can have adventures.
Like a different flavor. And I kind of miss the grab bag variety of the old show, where it's like you don't know what you're going to get. And this one, almost across the board, it's like Animaniacs short, Pinky and the Brain short, and then maybe like a tiny thing after that. And it's just like, well, if you killed all the other characters, let these new people create new things, and they do, but they're not like really recurring. It's just like a one-off.
Yeah, the one-offs. I almost wish. I'm so glad they have original one-offs in this, but it's like 4 of them or 3, and it's. do more. Like, don't. Honestly, it should be more like a pilot program in the hopes that they'll find the next Pinky in the Brain segment. And so every episode, I think, should have been a Warner's, a Pinky in the Brain, and then an original. Like, that should be all 3 segments for the whole series.
Just to, like, beef up the cast a lot.
Yeah.
And I went back to look at the old episode, just like what they were about, and pretty much by the WB era, it was mainly Animaniacs and Pinky in the Brain. Even though Pinky in the Brain had a different show on the same network, they're like, let's just have more Pinky in the Brain.
You can never have enough of them. Yeah. I mean, and their segments are always good. I think maybe the 1001 Nights sketch in the 12th episode is my least favorite Pinky in the Brain, but even that's really good.
Yeah. And going along with how I said earlier, like the format is basically the same. What I really would have liked with this series is some format breaking things. Like, I really would have loved to see one episode is just a half-hour Pinky in the Brain cartoon. What can you do with that? Because I feel like some of these ideas in these Pinky in the Brain cartoons are not given enough time, and they could be expanded upon, made much more interesting. And the Animaniacs, I think they only had like one half-hour cartoon in the original run, but like try it again. Like, try a bigger story with them.
Oh yeah, I think they were really rare, but they felt special when the Warners got them. Like the Warner. I mean, technically it was a whole episode, the Warner's anniversary special.
Yeah, and the like Amvillania one, I think. The King Yakko one, which was like a Duck Soup parody.
It was just a lengthy Duck Soup parody. Yeah. They could have broken the format more, but I don't think they wanted to challenge too much of what Animaniacs was. Like, I do think but I mean, in the original run, they just had to get 65 now.
Yeah.
So that way, I think you could be more like, let's just be wackier. Like, why don't we do a whole episode that's Anvilania?
I honestly think that the original writers, they had just made Tiny Toons. They were feeling on top of the world. They were a lot more confident than a lot of the writers on this show, who are seemingly all mostly newer writers and much younger writers.
Yeah.
And I feel like Spielberg was away, like, making Schindler's List and doing other things like that, so he was not as hands-on. Like, I don't know what he's doing now, but obviously he's an older man, not as active with directing, and not quite as hot. I mean, I'm sorry, man, Ready Player One, not my favorite movie of all time.
Well, he'll prove you wrong with that West Side Story movie that stars a canceled person in it now.
It should star the fucking pigeons, man.
No, I guess it sounded, every time I would have figured he didn't work that hard on the old ones, like I remember in the Freakazoid research, Paul Rudd he'd say, like, no, Steven was checking in every day. Like, he is the busiest man in film, but he'd still set aside an hour or two to check in.
Well, I mean, I guess the old writers just had more confidence or more chutzpah, because my one biggest complaint about this series is what I loved about original Animaniacs was, like, learning about the world of pop culture before I was born as a kid. Like, so much of it was about the 60s and the 70s and even, like, classic cinema from the 40s and the 30s. Coming into this knowing it's like, okay, it's made for the kids who watched Animaniacs and their kids, and I'm like, so of course if you're going to go for the same spirit, it's going to be like, let's reference obscure things from the 80s and 90s, and then like your kids will be like, Mom, what does Saved by the Bell, what does that mean? Like, what's the I'm so excited scene, what's up with that? Like, really obscure, cheesy things, but they don't do that.
Boy, you're right. Them doing something like that would be akin to doing the Day the Clown Cried parodies, the multiple Day the Clown Cried parodies they did in the series.
Yeah, really, that part let me down, because it's just like, this should be what the show is. I was just thinking of, like, what are the most obscure things the original Animaniacs did that I would ask my mom about, and it's like, yeah, the Day the Clown Cried, Apocalypse Now. There's a Pinky in the Brain episode called Brain Song, which is Pinky in the Brain essentially making the made-for-TV 1971 movie Brian Song.
Yeah.
Nothing that obscure is in this, and I felt like that was those writers getting away with everything. They're like, this show is not even for kids. The slapstick is there for kids, but all this 60s and 70s bullshit is for their parents who can giggle at all the cheesy things that we grew up with.
Yeah,
that is not in this series.
Yeah, they should have gone a little more... I think they put themselves up to the standard of, like, well, in the opening they say Bill Clinton plays the sax, so we need to reference current things. That's what they would do. I mean, there's the whole song about that in the first episode. But I think they missed that, like, yes, Animaniacs did like Tiny Toons, comment on current Hollywood trends, but they also did weird stuff. Also, just because one writer in the writer's room does a very good Jerry Lewis impersonation, and so they're just like, well, how do we shove that into this show?
He does two kinds of Jerry Lewis.
Serious Jerry and Freud Lathan.
Mr. Director, I want him back too. But yeah, I was just looking at all the things they parodied in the original series, and the level of obscurity that they rose to was just astounding. And it's like, now I know what these things are as an adult, but I'm like, what was Gunga Din? Did I understand the parody of Gunga Din? I don't know.
Kontiki, that was on Tiny
yeah,
Toons, but they did that too.
It's the same level of like 60s and 70s stuff where it's just like, if you're a kid, the characters are having fun, you don't need to know, but it's like how deep they go with the references is so impressive, just that they got away with it.
Now you're right. Or a lengthy one about like the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. Like that would be the equivalent now. I do hate thinking about time and how aging works, but I also had that recently. I watched a Lil Nas X interview, and I looked him up. He's like 21, and that's too young for him to be so much younger than me. But on top of that, he referenced like Chip Skylar. He's like, I'm as cool as Chip Skylar, which is the made up Chris Kirkpatrick character from NSYNC on Fairly Odd Parents.
Oh shit!
So that made me feel like 8 million years old when he's like, I want to be like Chip Skylar.
Just a toddler when that show was airing, I'm guessing. Yeah, like that is what disappointed me about this. I don't know if it's that they didn't have the confidence, but it just I think they missed their mark there, because that's what this show should be. Like, your kids born in like 2010 should be asking you questions when the show is over.
I also thing I think they overcorrected on was being less horny. I think the show should have been a little hornier, because Animaniacs is the Hello Nurse show, and it's like, and also Dot got to be she didn't get as many scenes of being horny for a hot guy, but she did get to be thirsty, and now all the characters are like much more calmed down. There's no like crazy there's actually Nils Niederhammer is like basically nude his entire episode with a perfect body. But
I mean, it was equal opportunity with the Warners, because Yakko and Wacko and Dot were all equal levels of horny for things.
Yeah, she'd always like jump on dudes, and like in the Monkeys song in the first episode, she says like, I didn't know your eyes were blue. She's always hitting on guys, and I feel like she got to be slightly horny in this, while Yakko and Wacko never got to be. And I mean, the joke in Animaniacs was they draw a hot lady, and then the boys look at the screen like, we're pretty turned on too.
And they would say, hello, nurse.
Yeah.
Like, I guess we find out the fate of Hello Nurse in this series.
I wish we'd seen, Elise got to see her on screen. Like, it's not, I think they have a very like early 2010s idea of like, hey, this is too sexually exploitative. This is just objectifying a woman. I feel like by the 2020s, we found a way to like, you can draw sexualized bodies in cartoons without objectifying them. You can have your cheesecake and eat it too.
It's finally okay to be horny again in the year 2020. Yeah, like the other thing that I thought was missing from this is that they cut the Warner Brothers lore. The Warner Brothers and Dot are like, they were characters created in the 30s, but they were so much crazier than like Buddy and Bosco that they were locked up, and then they broke out in 1993. Like, that is the lore, which honestly, they don't really touch upon it that much in the series, but when they want to, it's there. And I wish it would, like, some part of it was there, that they're these like immortal characters that have been they can also exist throughout time, but the lore is that they were like created originally in Termite Terrace.
Yeah, they were too crazy for the for the Merry Melodies, and they got locked in the tower and only got freed after 60 years. And then that's why if they were caring about the lore at all, the first episode would have had an actual reference to like, well, they have been locked in the tower since 1998. Instead, they do constantly say like, oh, I stopped seeing you in 1998, or I've been planning this since 1998, all these things, but there's no actual like in-universe explanation of why they've been gone since 1998.
I think that could have been an interesting thing to explore, even though like they were very irreverent about the lore. And yeah, that's another thing I don't like that much for a series I thought was generally pretty good, is that like once you do your first reboot thing, you can't talk about it anymore. You can't say like, oh boy, we're back, aren't we? Or like, are we doing this again? Like, no. I mean, I know Animaniacs from the beginning was very self-referential and very like fourth wall breaking, but I'm so sick of the reboot shit where it's just like a victory lap in every episode that I want it to stop. You get one, and even that's annoying, but I'll give you one episode to just like, pat yourself on the back, talk about you were back, everybody, then get back to normal.
I mean, we complained about that with Futurama, that they celebrated too long.
Yes.
That they're like, no, we're back. We're back again. This is the third time we're back. Like, we haven't had a chance to miss you. I hope if a smart joke in season 2 would be about them trying to go like, hey, and now let's do another song about us being back. It's like, you were gone for 9 months. Like,
yes.
Forget it. And I guess the other complaint I have, the biggest complaint I have about this is the Russia stuff. It's bad.
Yeah.
It's bad.
That kind of shocked me just because when I was growing up as a kid, all of the boomers writing those cartoons were making fun of the anti-Russian propaganda. You'd see it in things like Ren and Stimpy and Animaniacs and all the cartoons in the 90s. Like, weren't we so silly? And now we're literally just getting anti-Russian propaganda from the cartoon, like sincere anti-Russian propaganda. You should have just made up a fake Russian-style country, man.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, and I'm sick. I mean, they should have, in 2018, shirtless Putin jokes were old. Like, when they were writing it, somebody should have said, like, SNL doesn't do this shit anymore. Like, we got to stop. Like, it's just, the one bit at the end of the Warners Go to Russia episode that I didn't like was they make a joke at the end of like, hey, we're just like America. You guys have we're good people with a bad leader. It's like, well, then why did you all treat them like disgusting scum as a people
for the past 8 minutes? Yeah. That's an odd one, and I kind of wish they wouldn't have went there. Just especially, I'm just so tired of the Russia stuff.
Yeah.
And if anything, we deserve to have our elections interfered with. I'm not saying it happened or not, but we interfere with everyone's elections.
We've earned it.
Yes.
If they pull it off, good. Hey, you know what? I salute you.
You've worked hard, sir.
Yeah. And also their other rip from the headlines one, the gun control one or the bun control one.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, it just felt retro to me. Like, not that I do think gun control is a thing that should happen, and but it's just so gone from the headlines lately that I never even thought about it. It took me a long time to be like, oh, that's Wayne LaPierre, the head of the NRA. That's who it's supposed to be.
Something that hit me like at the end of the episode. Just like maybe the allegory wasn't obvious enough, or maybe I'm just too worried about disease. Guns have been like moved to the back of my brain.
Well, who thinks about the NRA anymore? Well, it's also like in an upside of a pandemic is there are fewer mass shootings because people aren't anywhere to be in a mass to be shot at, sadly. But yeah, that was one where I was like, oh, this feels kind of retro to talk about the NRA.
Yeah. What is this, 2015? And one other thing is that the voice actors are all back, and they all sound really good.
Yeah.
I will say Maurice LaMarche has aged to the point where the Vincent Price is out of the brain's voice, and it's just pure Orson Welles. And I will say this is a compliment to him. He looks like Orson Welles now.
He does, yes.
He even did a Frozen Peas sketch, live action, for Twitter.
That's right. Yeah, that was very good. Yeah, I think all the actors who are like, I think nearing or maybe even at 70 now, like they're
I think they're all like in their 60s at this point. Yeah,
they all sound really great. I don't feel like they. The only one who even sounded older to me really was LaMarche, but I think it makes Brain better. Like, Brain sounds a little wheezier, I guess, but like Rob Paulsen, he is just the same. Like, he prides himself on having the perfect voice and all that stuff. So, and I guess I noticed with Tress is again one of the best voice actors of her generation. The only thing I noticed with Tress was I felt when she had to sing, she couldn't sing in the dot voice anymore. It was just her voice.
And I think for some of the songs I noticed it was very odd. I mean, we'll talk about the production. It seems like parts of it were a little rushed and interfered with by COVID. But like in the first song, which I think is the best song in the series, the Reboot It song, it's just like, well, that's not Rob Paulsen singing as Yakko. But later in the song, it is him. And then throughout the rest of the series, I'm pretty sure it is just Rob Paulsen. But it's like they brought in a singer for half of the song. Could he not just hit certain notes anymore?
Yeah, that was distracting.
And like Tress is not in that song either. I don't think. I think she goes in and out of that song too, which is weird because she does sing the Vote song and the First Lady song, which
a weird one to end the season on. Like that's the song. I'd have gone with the Suffragette song if you're gonna go with a song,
or just like a big finish for your first season. But yeah, like when I saw that first song, I'm like, well, I guess they're not singing anymore. I guess Jess Harnell is still gonna be singing as Wacko, but I guess Tress and Rob can't do it anymore. But then they did, so I don't know what was up with that.
Yeah, but yeah, the voice cast. I think it's also just worth celebrating that, like, they're all still with us. Like, there's, a lot of these times when they bring back things, you're at least a little sad of like, well, one person's not here and we had to recast, but all your favorites are back. Like that's very special to me. Like when they do bring back Tiny Toons, Don Messick is long gone.
Yeah.
Hampton's gonna sound different, and Joe Lasky's gone. I hope they can get back Charlie Adler. He might not want to do it. I don't. Maybe they'll bury the hatchet, but it might just be Tress and then a bunch of new voices on Tiny Toons. But with Animaniacs, everybody's still there, and that adds a level of legitimacy to it that absolutely would not be there if it wasn't the full cast. And yeah, I think it's just still nuts to me that this is on Hulu, because HBO Max came along right after this deal was made. Yeah.
How do you feel about the online reception? I think it's been mostly positive, and I understand why people are annoyed by this, but I'm conflicted. At the same time, it's like, all these artists should be doing their own thing, but also this couldn't be as expensive without being an Animaniacs show with Steven Spielberg attached. So I'm conflicted there, but like I was getting a bit annoyed by people like sharing screen caps and like rolling their eyes, and I was just like, no, they would make this joke in 1993 about a different thing. Like, all the humor is the same, and I'm surprised the humor is the same based on the showrunner. If I knew who the showrunner was, I would have went into this with a much more negative attitude. I'm glad I found that out much later.
Me too. I didn't look at the IMDb page for the showrunner until after you said like, oh, this showrunner. I'm like, I think it's fair to compare it to the original show. I think it's pretty good by comparison. And yeah, it's like, do I wish the moments like in the episode 8 we're doing of an original thing, I'm like, boy, they could have just, if you gave this much money to these people and just said, make an original show like Animaniacs, but don't bring back anybody, I think they'd make a really good show that would be like free of expectations and constraints. But as the Reboot It song makes clear, you don't get to do that in Hollywood now. Like, Animaniacs was insanely lucky they even got to be that original in 1993. Tiny Toons only happened because they're like, oh, this is going to be little Looney Tunes. You know what? We'll make up new characters, but it's basically little Looney Tunes. Animaniacs finally got to be like, it's just ideas. It's just sketches,
And every time I enjoy a reboot like this, I do think of Matt Christman saying, like, all of these reboots are part of like an elaborate ritual, because if we bring back enough things, we can actually bring the 90s back. That's the belief. Like, we can make it the 90s again if we bring all the 90s stuff here.
It's a terrifying thought, but I think
we want the comfort of the 90s.
I miss it.
Yeah.
I miss that comfort of the warm hug of a childhood. But like, I mean, this is what we're going through. When our parents were in their 30s, all of their stuff came back. They got like the Sergeant Bilko movie and the Flintstones, all that crap. So we're just going through it ourselves. It just shows that we're getting older,
And I failed by not having a child to watch this with. I watched it with my parrot, which he's almost 20, so that could have been my surly college boy coming home for the holidays.
This is gay dad doing gay stuff. No,
these are my cartoons, Bob Jr.
I think actually that one of my favorite jokes about the age of the series, and it was when it's the Pinky and the Brain go to daycare one, and Pinky and the Brain are pulled out of a backpack by a mom, and she goes like, must be my sister. She just wants to be the cool aunt getting my kid toys from a show from the 90s. Who cares?
I will say, when I saw that joke, I was like, should I go on Amazon to see if there are Pinky and the Brain figures? Because I really want them now.
They'd be to scale. They would be. That's why they're perfect action figures. Yeah, but I mostly enjoyed this.
Yeah.
I was seeing more of a backlash on Twitter of like, the original show wasn't very good either. I'm like, come on.
Yeah. I don't care for that. I mean, again, it had its highs, it had its lows, but it was part of like a great legacy of Warner Brothers Animation. And I was seeing people, I feel like a lot of people wanted to hate this, and I've been that person sometimes.
But sure, we both have, yeah.
I would see like inaccurate complaints, the worst kind of complaints, where people would be like, these boomers don't know what they're talking about. And looking at the cast of writers, like, no, they kept the boomers out of this writing room on purpose. Everyone writing for the show was under 40 outside of the showrunner.
Most of the writers, I think, are younger than we are.
They are, yeah. But yeah, that's our thoughts up front on the whole season. Let's talk about the history, the actually surprisingly long history of Animaniacs 2020. So what inspired this reboot? Money.
Of course.
Spielberg was like, I like money. And so does Hulu, even though they paid a lot of money for this. But the original Animaniacs run hit Netflix in 2016. I totally forgot about that.
Oh, wow. I missed that too. Yeah.
And when it hit Netflix, it had an amazing surge of popularity. I don't remember this at all, but it got people talking about Animaniacs again, just to have all 99 episodes dumped onto Netflix.
Wow. I didn't know that either, because I only knew it when it moved to Hulu. I was completely checked out of it being on Netflix in 2016. But I mean, 2016 was a weird year.
It was, yeah. We all want to forget about it because that was also the year that Fuller House launched on Netflix.
I was too busy watching Fuller House to even pay attention.
You know, that show was kind of saucy for being a reboot of Full House. So all the breasts are on display.
Yeah, well, I guess, these ladies are proud. They want to show off those bonds.
True.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, that combined with a reboot of a, existing 90s show being very popular, it made sense. Like, we should bring back Animaniacs. Like, there's an audience for rebooted 90s things on a streaming network, and Fuller House is proof of that.
And also importantly, it sounded like Steven Spielberg was ready to play ball and do more with it.
He had some time off, I guess. I don't know what he makes anymore because I just kind of checked out after the 90s.
I mean, yeah, he did the Ready Player One and now the West Side Story.
Right.
I think everybody made fun of Ready Player One so much that he then went away, which I think he's not the problem with that movie.
No,
in fact, the sway of Steven Spielberg even made it even work at all with all of the copyrights he was able to just talk into being in his movie.
It's sort of like Roger Rabbit, right?
Yeah, it's actually very, except much worse.
I would hate to think that is any generation's Roger Rabbit. That just makes me sick.
I mean, because it was made for our generation. It was made for the Roger Rabbit generation.
Oh God,
again,
you're right.
But
all your toys are back, kids. So on May 30th of 2017, the announcement came that Amblin and Warner would be teaming up for a revival of the classic series. And then in early January of 2018 came the official news that Hulu would be the home of a 2-season Animaniacs reboot, and the entire run of both Animaniacs and Tiny Toon Adventures will be landing on Hulu. So we are almost 3 years out from that announcement.
I cannot believe it's been that long. Because I remembered in the interim years of almost 20 years from the last episode to the announcement, the voices would do tons of appearances and be like, hey, would you bring it back? Like, well, we'd like to, but nobody will. Now to think that it's been, maybe that's also why this felt kind of almost overdue when it came out, because I was like, it got announced too early, really.
Yeah, there was an Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain panel at every Comic-Con, every Sketch Fest. Ever since internet video existed, I've watched Maurice LaMarche and Rob Paulson doing the Brain and Pinky bits
so
together
many times. Yeah. But this one, when it got announced, I guess it was announced at the time too, because it got me to go onto Hulu and be like, well, if there's more of it coming soon, I'll start watching the old Animaniacs again, and to a lesser degree, Tiny Toons.
I think Pinky and the Brain landed there at the same time too.
Yeah. It was perfect timing for us to cover all of those things on our show. It made it a lot easier for this podcast.
And who would develop the series, you might ask? That would be Wellesley Wild, his actual name.
What a weird name.
And he really doesn't do the kind of things that Henry and I are fans of. Looking at who this guy is and what he's done, I'm like, how did the Animaniacs reboot end up being as good as it is? Because I'm sure he's a talented writer, but everything he's made, I'm like, I don't ever want to look at this.
I mean, it would be done... I don't know. Maybe it was done in spite of him, and that it was good. Maybe I can blame all the bad Russiagate stuff on a student of type of animation I really don't like.
I mean, I can see why you would hire him, because he seems like the stuff he works on is very gag based. So that would be perfect. Let's talk about his career. He started as a writer on the first season of the Craig Kilborn's post Daily Show late night series.
The jockiest of jock shows.
I have no memory of that, and Craig Kilborn is just gone now. now.
Yeah, well, he did it for like 2 years, and he's like, I'm out of here. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of this.
And that is where Wellesley Wild got his writing partner Alex Sulkin hired onto the show as well. So that's where their career began together.
Right.
So together, these two would write an episode of The Pits, the famous Mike Scully show.
God.
Check out our Mike Scully interviews. I think we talk about The Pits a little bit.
Maybe a little. Yeah, I think we did. Yeah.
Lizzie Kaplan, an early role for her.
That's right.
As the Pit daughter.
the youngest of the Pits.
Yes. So they work on an episode of The Pits before finding themselves on a staff of a different reboot, and that would be Fox's reboot of Family Guy in 2005.
Oh, right. Yeah. So that's, when I saw he's like, oh, Family Guy. Oh, the return Family Guy? That's, that has its ups and downs, but to know that he's like a later Family Guy writer, I'm just like, eh.
By later, you mean 15 years ago?
Yeah, 15 years
I mean,
ago,
I was watching that because in 2005, hating Family Guy could be your personality.
Yes.
And it certainly was mine. So Wellesley Wild and Alex Sulkin would make their Family Guy debut with the 2005 episode P-Tarded. I'm just saying that's the name of the episode.
I knew that had to be the episode.
It's written in print, and that is it.
I knew that is the episode where Peter Griffin is tested for his IQ, and he is officially mentally handicapped.
But
they
say the R word in that show.
Oh, they sure do. Yeah. But I guess that was. I remember thinking that was at least to a degree a clever idea, that if you were to test the IQ of the stupid sitcom dad, they might, like Homer's IQ is at mental handicap level in some episodes too. So of course they did that. Of course they did.
That was their thing they did first for Family Guy, and they would write episodes for the next 9 seasons, often not together, like sometimes together, sometimes not. So they weren't always writing partners on that show.
Now I totally get the way of thinking of getting like a Family Guy pro to go on to Animaniacs. Like Family Guy has more than a few things in common with Animaniacs. You've got constant musical numbers.
Oh, you're right, yeah.
And you've got all these like cutaway gags and
obscure pop culture references.
Like the puzzle pieces do fit together too. And on top of that, if you've written Stewie Griffin, then you've written a brain ripoff already.
Oh my God, yes. We pointed that out a few times on our original Family Guy stuff. Like, I'm glad they changed Stewie because he was just the brain.
Yeah.
His B plots were just the brain plots.
Except without a pinky to yell at, because I guess Seth MacFarlane...
That bear, I guess he would yell at?
I guess, yeah, silent. Well, because Seth MacFarlane couldn't play Pinky as well. But then they figured out, but Stewie and Brian can talk to each other all the time. And that way Seth can just keep talking to himself and not have to bother with other people's voices.
It's the Seth show. So they would leave Family Guy. They got a development deal with Fox. And what sitcom would they create? The beloved sitcom Dads.
Ugh.
That sitcom was reviled from the second any footage hit the internet. Just everyone just turned on it, and rightfully so.
Yeah, no, it also seemed to go through a problem that this feels like I'm insulting Mike Scully, but a thing that happened for Mike Scully when he did that show with Mel Gibson was that
Complete Savages?
Complete Savages. When I watched a couple episodes of it, I was like, these are jokes that all work in animation that are disgusting, but when you do them in live action, they do feel much worse and offensive.
You're just watching cruelty with a laugh track, but I guess the world was not ready for the Giovanni Ribisi sitcom.
Also, that shows all its money's going to Scientology.
You're right.
Giovanni Ribisi.
Somehow all 19 episodes of that show aired, and it did fairly well, but I guess just it was not doing well enough for them.
I could see that. Yeah, I mean, look, it did cut your loss. Also on a live action show, I think they need to cut bait sooner than with an animated show.
And we said it before, Henry, not enough things are about dads, so it's a shame that show, the Dad Show, just went off the air.
What if dads could be disgusting, too? We haven't seen that in our lives.
They should have called it like Bad Dads or something. Dads is not descriptive enough at all.
Well, then they'd be infringing on the Bad Moms property.
Right. They already got the rights to the title Bad Dads. So these guys would remain in the McFarlane verse and write a lot of shit for McFarlane with him. So they wrote Ted 2, and A Million Ways to Die in the West. And Wellesley Wild, I'm going to keep saying Wesley. Wellesley Wild also co-executive produced another McFarlane series, The Orville, and wrote an episode. So
every time I diss that show, people tell me and I just diss it based on general concept. People tell me, no, it's really not bad.
I hear it's better
Star Trek show
than the actual Star Trek show they're making now.
I've heard that too. I will say the only experience I have with either Discovery or Picard is watching Red Letter Media make fun of it in there, and they make it look very bad.
I will say, guys, Star Trek died in the 90s. Let it stay dead. That's it. Nothing good came of anything after that.
Or if you're gonna bring it back, be boring, which I think Orville kind of is.
Yeah,
so,
I don't want to see like 80-year-old Patrick Stewart as an action star. That's just weird.
No, why are we forcing? Anyway.
So yeah, it's weird. Actually, I was thinking like with how tight they are with McFarlane, it's weird that McFarlane didn't do a voice for any character on this because he is a voice actor. It would have been a cool like cameo or something.
Oh,
you know?
Totally. Why they should have written a duet for him. He
Oh,
probably would.
Jesus.
If they wrote a song, he'd have done it. But
We've got a Sinatra parody.
We've made up another Sinatra for you to be. I mean, that's why he's in Sing, because he's a Sinatra mouse.
That bastard. I knew it.
Though I guess maybe if they wrote a song for Rachel McFarlane, he'd also come in for it. But yeah, that's weird. Well, also, I wonder if they shopped this around to like, hey, Seth, do you just want to produce this too? And like he was like, I'm too busy.
I have
or
5
whatever.
shows and I'm recording my 5th cover album of like the Rat Pack garbage. So
and he signed an overall deal with Universal, or Comcast, whatever you want to call it. So I guess he probably couldn't work on this Hulu show for Warner.
So yeah, at some point it seems like Wellesley Wild and Alex Sulkin, they are no longer writing partners. I hope it was amicable, but Alex Sulkin, his writing partner for the past like 20 years, is not part of this project.
It happens, It happened with Algina, Mike Reese. It happened with briefly Bill and Josh on Simpsons, and then or post Simpsons. So it happens. Hopefully it's no bad blood.
And so he is the showrunner in terms of writing. The showrunner in terms of like art direction is Gabe Swar. And believe me, this show has a lot of Spumco, Ren and Stimpy DNA.
That is the weirdest thing to me in this, because it is so Spumco looking. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. You don't see it in the old characters, because they mostly stick to those character designs. But every human, I'm like, these are Ren and Stimpy characters. Every person.
It's very funny because that Silver Age of WB has a lot of old Spumco people.
Yeah.
This era has all of the second-gen Spumco people who were trained in the late 90s, early 2000s by John Kay.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
right.
So we have to talk about John Kay. I'm sorry.
It
has to come up this episode. But it's like, it's so weird that this is the second generation of Spumco people on the second generation of Animaniacs.
And the irony is that there's lots of ironies, but ironically, John Kay, when Animaniacs came out, hated it.
Yes.
So that all of these people who were trained by him in part or are so inspired by him, they're working on the show that he couldn't stand.
Yeah. Ren and Stimpy co-creator John Kricfalusi, I love thinking that like the people he trained are now working on Animaniacs, and that rules.
Yes.
And if he was dead, and I hope he is one day soon before this podcast, that'd be awesome if he died just now. But I want him to be spinning in his grave constantly, knowing the young people some he preyed upon are working on Animaniacs now.
Yeah, it does work as an FU to a degree to that piece of shit.
But let's talk about Gabe Swar. He was a big wheel down at the post Ren and Stimpy Spumco factory, which is actually how I know who he is. Like when I first got online, I was constantly following Spumco until I got sick of John Kay and learned a lot more about him. So I was like, what are they doing next? What are they working on next? Of course, John Kay talked big. So
he was working on so many things.
You always felt like the next big thing was coming. They're going to get another series. They're going to get shorts behind movies and things like that.
Well, and that gave you a flavor of how good for a time he was at tricking executives too. Like that's how that kind of pitch of like, we've got the next big thing. It's going to be bigger than Ren and Stimpy. It's coming. Like that's how you sell things to executives too. But eventually you do have to deliver something. Something has to happen.
So yeah, in the late 90s, John Kay tricked Cartoon Network into letting him make Yogi Bear shorts. And I think the first one took like 2 years to make.
For fucking 8 minutes.
And that was Boo Boo Runs Wild.
Yeah.
And Gabe Swar would be the color key artist and on that.
Oh, okay.
And he'd be a storyboard artist on The Ripping Friends. And he would also direct the 2 very weird Jetson Spumco shorts where, get this, George Jetson is an abusive father.
Oh, right. I think that was finally the one where it's like, I watched all of the Yogi Bear one, and I think I watched every episode of Ripping Friends I could tune into. But eventually, when I saw like another abusive father thing, that just it made me so uncomfortable. I've had enough.
I
guys.
did like A Day in the Life of Ranger Smith. That was the best shortest, but like the best gag in that is like he's walking through the forest. As he passes every tree, his design changes like it did in the original series.
I loved that. Yes, that was like the best joke in that one. Yeah, but again, they just got too up their own ass, and like that Jetsons one, barfaroo, man. And well, now that you said Ripping Friends, I'm like, oh yeah, every human, especially Nils, looks like a ripping friend.
I like that across the board. Like the original series was not consistent because there were like 8 different studios. The pipeline was huge. There was not like the internet as we know it now. So like there was not a lot of control. So like every studio made different looking characters.
Oh yeah.
So now across the board, there is like one cohesive design sense in this reboot.
That's true. Yeah, it's much more together than the original series was. But that's again when you gotta have 65 eps ready by September of 1993, or at least have like 30 of them ready. Like you have to throw it to every studio you possibly can.
And unfortunately, we also have to talk about Ren and Stimpy adult party cartoon because just people had worked on this, and he was a layout artist for that series, which art in that series was fine. The writing got awful and bad.
Yes, yeah, it's in the Ren and Stimpy documentary, I watched it and I felt it was way too nice to John Kay. And still let him kind of tell his own story. The most damning moment in that entire one of the most damning moments for John Kay in that entire thing was when for like 2 minutes they just show clips of all the things he did after Ren and Stimpy. And it's like the second you look at it, it's like, oh yeah, he's a failure. Like this shows where the talent was, or what he could do without all the people he says fucked up his show.
All the people holding him up.
Yeah,
they're not there anymore.
You can totally see the difference of what he produced. But I mean, like all these people who were working for him on Adult Party Cartoon, they like us as fans, they fell into the myth of John Kay. You're working for the Tex Avery of today. Like, don't you want to do that? You'll be the greatest animator you can be if you do that.
Only 3 of the 6 cartoons of that aired because they weren't done.
Right.
He could still not finish anything. And then when the DVD came out, I'm like, oh, cool. There's 3 Ren and Stimpies I haven't seen. I couldn't even finish them because it's like, I'm not watching a 40-minute Ren and Stimpy cartoon about Stimpy giving birth to poop.
No.
It's not going to happen.
But what? You didn't get your jollies to the beach party episode?
No. I had the internet. Like, there was real nudity to be found.
Well, it wasn't professionally drawn by people.
Oh. Yes, it's true. But yeah, Gabe Swar, too much on his bow to mention here. Very ton of work he's done. He was big at DreamWorks, working on things like Kung Fu Panda, Legends of Awesomeness, and he was the animation director on The Penguins of Madagascar. And,
okay, well, that's good. Well, I'm glad after Ren and Stimpy, he got free of the John Kay machine at least and started. I'm sure John Kay would have a lot of opinions on him working on DreamWorks shit, but on the Penguins of Madagascar. But at least he produced things and made them, John.
And yeah, Gabe Swar is a great illustrator and artist. Like, there are so many pro follows based on my research for this episode, and Gabe Swar is one of them. Like, follow him on Twitter.
Okay.
So much cool original art. He's a big retro gaming fan. I want to get him on a podcast, talk about fun retro gaming stuff with him at some point, I think.
All right, I'm gonna check. I will definitely be following him. Yeah.
So according to Swar, just like with the original series, Spielberg was incredibly involved, and according to Wellesley Wild, Spielberg was at every pitch meeting and insisted on bringing back the original cast of voice actors as well as scoring the show with a full orchestra, just like the 90s show.
That's good. Although that makes it even stranger to me that who wasn't invited back then. And Spielberg was so insistent on the writers. I mean, the music too. It's full orchestration, which I love. Like that feels like just like 30 years ago, Spielberg just says, "I want a full orchestra," and he gets it. You know?
I want an entire sidebar before the episode discussion about who wasn't invited back because it's very weird. It's like we want the original spirit of the show, and then nobody from the original show was invited back to the party. It's very strange. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, Swar says he looks. Wellesley Wild said he looks at everything, every outline, every pitch, script, animatic, and design. Wow. And from what I got they're being very friendly. Like it seems like Spielberg, it's like a double-edged sword in that because of him, you can spend all this money, you can make all these changes, you can make everything perfect, but he is very controlling and might be a huge pain in the ass to work with. And according to Swar, they had to re-storyboard the first 8 episodes. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work.
And no other show on probably any streaming network would go like, well, sure, just do it again. Like they would say, if you've got, if you're this far in the animation, you do it. Like you've already spent this much. But Spielberg, nobody gets to have that much power now. I think even Seth MacFarlane, if he made a similar deal and said, or Matt Groening was like, nah, let's throw it all out, they wouldn't get to do that.
Yeah, it's like we're not spending money on like 2 more months of production. I'm sorry.
Yeah, even if you're that big of a name, I still don't think they would. But Spielberg is on that next other level. I think I'd read some anecdote where like Spielberg somewhere said like, oh yeah, when we worked with TMS in the old days, they animated on the ones, and it's like, no, they didn't.
Maybe it looks like that because they're so good.
I mean, okay, maybe in the opening, in some shots, occasionally it would have been on ones, but that had to be on twos the entire at most.
Even TMS is not that insane.
Yeah, at least not on non-theatrical animation. Like they did everything on ones and Akira as a flex, but they're not going to do that for Animaniacs.
So the show from the beginning was set up to be like an adult animated show with a writer's room and a non-storyboard based approach where it's like you write your script, then you hand it over to animation. You're not writing things with storyboard.
Which was the old show.
Yeah,
the old show, too, was all script-based.
Even though a lot of the people working on that show were artists, like
That's
Tom
right.
Ruger.
Yeah. But, yeah, you're... but, I mean, that's... If you hire a Family Guy writer to run your show, he's not going to be like, I'm only hiring storyboarders. Like, that's not going to happen.
This man is crazy.
Yeah.
So one issue, which I'm glad they address up front, is that like they're writing the show in 2018, knowing that it will debut in 2020, so they can't do anything current. So a lot of their things were just like... A lot of their ideas were just like, what's going to happen in 2020, not knowing about COVID, of course. So like, well, of course the Olympics are happening in 2020.
Right.
So that's why there's an Olympics cartoon.
Right.
And of course they knew there'd be an election. I think they probably wanted this to air before the election. It's weird that there's all this election stuff weeks after we've done that already.
That was an odd choice, yeah. It almost feels like late in the game, Hulu was like, we're just going to do a season dump the week of Thanksgiving. So that way everybody can watch it during a holiday week. But and they do a Halloween episode, which I'm watching a month after Halloween.
That is interesting. I did like that episode a lot, and I will say to zoom back to things I don't like about the series, I found in an odd way, not just in terms of obscurity, but their parodies were not very specific. And I mean, like, based on the clip that they showed first, the Jurassic Park parody, you're like, oh yeah, like the old show, they're going to just parody movies. They're just going to stick the Warners into this movie, and they're going to have fun with the villain and the heroes and stuff. It only happens, like, I think in their parody of the newer version of the movie It.
Yeah, that's the most specific, because they, like, in the first episode, they walk by, like, Wonder Woman and Batman and all these things, which, it's funny, they can do a Batman joke now, just like they did Batman jokes in 1993,
yes.
But you're right, they don't, that when they do the Odyssey, it's just like a general Greek thing. When they face Nils, or when they, the big game hunter is just this, like, leftover character. It's not an extended thing. Only Nickelwise, who's, I believe, voiced by the guy who did do Pennywise.
I think so. Yeah, I did like that cartoon, but I was expecting, parodies of classic movies, and not just classic meaning the 80s and 90s, like things like, they parodied the Maltese Falcon and West Side Story and things like that way back in the past.
I guess, the Good Feathers, when you get rid of them, you can't do any of those.
No, you can't parody any mob movies.
Every Italian parody you could do is gone. They did do Hercule Yakko. They did a whole Murder on the Orient Express thing, which they even had a quick reference to, like, oh, we did this in the old show. We did a Hercule Yakko one as well.
And if they did at least one Good Feathers cartoon, they could have covered all the Scorsese stuff that was made after 1998.
Yeah,
but they didn't do that.
Oh my God. Okay, they can't do it for season 2. They are fucking up. They have to do an Irishman Goodfeathers parody. Like, at the very least, do that one.
And The Departed, right?
Yeah.
Like, the Depigeon.
The Depigeon, yeah.
There we go. I'm writing it now. Hire me, please.
But Irishman brings back Pesci. It's the Pesci is back, so they finally have new Pesci jokes. They can even do jokes about how they all are looking younger than they are.
That's
like,
perfect. You know what? The Goodfeathers were fine. I don't have a problem with the Goodfeathers.
Yeah. I mean, who else can do a Ray Liotta impression? Nobody else.
I think that was Maurice LaMarche.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. It was a good one.
Yeah, I liked it. So yeah, back to the writing. Because of the COVID, a few things were changed. One thing on the record is that there's an episode where Dr. Scratch and Sniff is sick, and they make like cartoony like polka dots on his face and body to make it not like traumatic for people thinking about disease.
Oh, I didn't think.
Yeah.
It's kind of distracting how he's covered in polka dots all episode, but that makes so much sense why they changed that. Yeah. But he ate the sauerkraut that went sour.
It's true. It was too sour. One thing that was not on the record that I found very odd was just like, again, you have an ensemble show, you get rid of 80% of the characters. Aren't you going to talk about that? Like the decisions you made? It's never talked about, which I find very odd and very like telling. And apparently they wanted Freakazoid to make an appearance, but things were moving very fast, and Paul Rudd couldn't find time in his schedule. He's probably doing that Ned Earth to Ned. Is that the name of the show?
Yeah, Earth to Ned. Yeah.
And then like a few years ago, I follow Paul Rudd, the creator of Freakazoid, and writer on Animaniacs, of course. I follow him on Instagram, and he made a video saying, I had a meeting with the Animaniacs people, and I said, guys, that was 25 years ago. I moved on with my life. I'm working on a new thing. So maybe that was why he didn't want to do the voice. But I think he felt betrayed because of the casting choices they made. We'll talk about that soon. But again, nobody from the old show was even like notified of this when they started it.
I will say an interesting wrinkle to this with the Paul Rudd thing is that, well, for one thing, recently Teen Titans Go did a Halloween episode, and he is in it as Freakazoid.
I need to see that.
It's
really
fun. You get to hear him do the whoosh again, his flying sound. And then second, I also follow him on Twitter, and he did a blink and you miss it post because he deleted it quick. Of saying when the Tiny Toons reboot was announced, he's like, look, I'm sure everyone's working hard on it. This is me paraphrasing, but he basically said he wishes everybody well working on it, but if you're going to do it without Tom Ruger, it's not really Tiny Toons.
I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I honestly feel like he felt slighted, and he was looking out for his old friends, and he was just like, well, if you don't invite anyone back to help with the show, I don't want to do you the favor of lending you the Freakazoid voice and character.
Yeah. I wonder, could the voice actors have said, well, bring back the old writers as consultants, or else we're not going to record? But that puts a lot of pressure on them, and they're getting old, and they desperately want to play these characters one more time, I bet, in most cases. So, and just have fun in the recording booth. I can understand why they didn't, but they could have gone to bat for him, or somebody could have.
I just feel very conflicted about the series because so much of Animaniacs is so personal to the people who created it. Like, the three main characters are based on the sons of Tom Ruger. Slappy Squirrel is like who Sherry Stoner thought she would be as an old lady.
And now she is that old lady.
Exactly. She's aged in the Slappy. Skippy Squirrel is one of, he was played by two of Tom Ruger, creator of Animaniacs' sons. Like, Pinky and the Brain are caricatures of Warner Brothers animation artists. Like, so much of this stuff is based on the people who made it at the time. And to not have them back feels like an insult. And it makes me feel guilty for enjoying this reboot.
To a degree, yeah. They're being as nice. Like, Rugg deleted that tweet very quickly, but because I think he just wants to be nice. And also, it's Hollywood. You don't want to. What are you going to do? Insult Steven Spielberg? Like, you're only going to cause trouble for yourself. But you can tell, like, from Ruger's Twitter too, that he's like being as nice about it as possible, but he wishes he was there. For sure.
I looked into original series creator Tom Ruger and what he had to think about the series, and he was basically so there's a Rolling Stone article about this. It's easy to look up. It's just his thoughts on the series, and basically he found out it was in development. No one told him, which is great. Which is what happened to like when the Ren and Stimpy series, which is probably not going to happen, when that reboot was announced. Like Bob Camp, the good co-creator, was just like, well, no one told me about this. Like I made so much of that series without John Kay. Why is no one telling me about the series they're bringing back?
He made more episodes than John Kay did, like that. Yeah, I don't understand that. Just to be nice, like people get consulting producer, just like nothing producer credits on these shows, like just as this face-saving thing to not insult somebody. Like just do that. Like
just let him come in for like a day a week. He can sit in the corner and be like, yeah, this is what Wacko would say.
Yeah, like the Simpsons in their writers' room treat their vets with much more respect. To just like, Dave Merkin he comes in on the rewrite day and he can just like throw out a pitch if he wants to. Like you don't have to put Ruger in charge. Like it's not like, no, the old hierarchies have to be back. This guy who hasn't run a show in 20 years should run this show. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, I don't think he was expecting that either. So yeah, he set up a meeting when he found out the show was in development, and according to him, he was basically told, we've got this covered, don't worry. Like in a polite way, they were telling him you're not invited. A spokesperson from Warner Brothers said like, oh, we kept Mr. Ruger aware of the show for the entire time during development, so it's a he said she said thing. I kind of want to believe Tom Ruger over the corporation.
I kind of do too. I want to believe him. I mean, look, nobody's perfect, but I'm more on his side in this, and the rug clip too like made me feel that way of just invite them. Like how easy would it be to just even just for like, okay, it's the brainstorming session, or just like the first couple months, like, and you can lean on him, or just have like the showrunner and the writers meet with Ruger, like, what tips would you give us? How would you say? And Ruger could just give him the tips of like, well, this is how Yakko does these things. Here's just give him that.
The things I find missing about this show are the things I think they would have brought to this reboot. Again, like the specificity of parodies, the obscure references, the Warner Brothers more in the real world, the lore of the show. Like I feel like all that stuff is missing, and maybe if some of these people were invited back, we would have seen that in the show.
I also think comparatively, and this is also just based on interviews and reading stuff, but so I don't know these things, but comparatively for DuckTales, I know in the first season when they brought in their reference to Darkwing Duck and started bringing Darkwing Duck into it, they definitely checked with Tad Stones about it, and just like, hey, what do you think? Like he knew it was happening, and he was included on some level in the redevelopment of it. So it wasn't just that they got back Jim Cummings to be Darkwing for those scenes in the first episode, but they recognized who the creator was, and it sounded like they at least wanted to be on positive terms with him, which in this day and age on social media, when people know who all the original creators are, you should just be friendly from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah, for like a PR perspective. You want to be cynical about it. But so I have Ruger on the record in this Rolling Stone article. So he says, quote, I find it morally, ethically, and professionally wrong. He says, laughing ruefully, quote, that's pretty much it. Whether it's legally wrong, I don't know. They own the show Warner Brothers, and Amblin owns Tiny Toons, Animaniacs, Freakazoid, and Pinky and the Brain. I think they feel they can do whatever the heck they want with it. If we, the creators of the show, had passed away, I would completely understand what they did. But we are not. We're all alive, thriving, active, and I really don't get that they wouldn't want the people that know the show better than anyone to be involved. It's just odd.
Yeah, it is. That is really, he's got a very good point. Like, and you can't do Slappy Squirrel without Sherry Stoner. Like she is Slappy, and so I guess it's better than recasting Slappy, I suppose, in that case. But especially like I think Sherry Stoner is such an underappreciated like writer and actor in the show, and I really think Slappy Squirrel would work so interesting in 2020. I think because in the 90s she was talking about 40s cartoons. Now she could talk about like 70s cartoons.
Yeah, that's true.
What does an ancient 1940s cartoon in 2020 think of cartoons? Like you could just talk shit about cartoons through her character, and it'd be so much fun.
Could like interact with like a Filmation style He-Man character or whatever.
Oh, God, yeah. And then she could meet a BoJack Horseman and be like, what you said? Who cares?
You know what? Slappy was the original BoJack Horseman.
You're right. Yeah. She was over it. She had an episode that dealt with Alzheimer's as well.
So Ruger was later offered the chance to submit a script for the series as like an olive branch, but he was like, yeah, I don't want to audition for the series I created, so no thanks.
That is like it's honestly kind of an insult.
Slap in the face, yeah. But yeah, like I honestly don't get it. Of course they're avoiding this in interviews. They like Tom Ruger didn't burn any bridges. He made like Hysteria after Animaniacs. All these people like made these shows so great and memorable, and they're not even like given a phone call.
I do not understand it
like,
at all.
Steven Spielberg knows who Tom Ruger is.
He met with him quite a lot. Yeah, when you hear stories about how closely they work with Spielberg, it's like, then why? I mean, I guess it really goes up the chain to Spielberg. Like if they're saying in an interview Spielberg could insist on having all the old cast and not recasting there, then obviously he also had an opinion about who would be the writer and make that choice. Like, if Spielberg wanted him there, they'd be there. And so I feel like it's the unspoken thing here is Spielberg doesn't want him there. That's what I'm feeling.
Yeah, I don't like it. Again, whenever they say like we want to stay true to the original spirit of the show, just like, well, the original spirit was like the writing
it was
of the
Tom
show.
Ruger's family.
Yeah. So yeah, let's move on to the animation stuff. This is a very long history of the show, but there's a lot going on here. So again, like if you remember Animaniacs looking good, you're remembering the TMS episodes, because even like the mushy episodes were made at a higher level than most other things on TV at the time, but they didn't look quote unquote good.
Yes.
So like across the board, it was very inconsistent just because of the way animation worked at the time, just because there was not instant communication. You couldn't send someone a video of your latest pencil test like across email or whatever.
Yeah.
You just had to be trusted working far off and who God knows where. So
and you just deal with what you get coming back. You can't do much correction after the fact.
And it's fun, like just like with Tiny Toons, just like every studio had their own versions of the characters. So like immediately when you see them, you're like, that's an ACOM episode, that's a Freelance episode, that's a Star Toons episode, that's a Wang episode.
Look at that Wang.
The mushy Wangs. But
good night, everybody.
Yes,
hey.
that's our little riff. But who did the best episodes? Well, yeah, we said it earlier, but just like us, everyone who works on this show is a TMS sicko.
Good.
They realize, like, honestly, you didn't have to do research. Who did the opening? They did the best Animaniacs. Who did the Tiny Toons opening? They are the best animators. So, yeah, they started with TMS as their template for this reboot, and that was a wise decision. There's a really good Cartoon Brew article called How the Creators of Hulu's Animaniacs Reboot Suddenly Updated the Look of the Series. Check that out, because you can see some very different looking designs that they could have gone with. Ultimately, they stuck with, like, what were the ideal versions of these characters? Let's go from there.
Imagine if they had a redesign on the level of Thundercats Roar. What the internet would have reacted to that with, like, which I wouldn't even say like it would have been bold. I'm not even saying it would be bad. I like the look. I am not a CalArts look hater like a lot of the people who hate Thundercats Roar are, but I think if Animaniacs looked like that, they would have set this series on fire.
It is my dream come true, because it was like, you know, what is your favorite version of the character? What if the entire show looked like that?
Yeah.
And that is what this is. So yeah, Gabe Swar and his team, they looked at the TMS episodes and they like really broke it down, like what makes those versions like the best. And they looked at like things like, okay, they are more angular. The designs are simplified. They will often like break perspective for the sake of an expression, just like in anime. Like when when a face is like when a mouth is pasted onto the side of a face, they're not thinking about like where did the teeth go? How does the skull work? It's just like no, that's the best way to draw that expression. So we're gonna break anatomy to have a good expression.
I never thought. Yeah, that you're right. Yeah, so many of their like drooping mouth down. Like that's one of my favorite things about how TMS would draw. I just knew from looking at the mouths on a Tiny Toons or Animaniacs by them, like the mouth is always on one side of the face,
and it would often like break through the outline of the face.
Yeah. I love they broke those rules.
And yeah, just I mean, even they were admitting they had no, like, how did they have such control over these characters? Like on a technical level, just the way they move these shapes around so effortlessly.
Yeah.
They were like, we can't be this good, but we can at least aspire to the greatness of TMS.
Yeah, I mean, TMS isn't what TMS used to be. You know,
no.
Like that was a perfect storm of the TMS that already mastered like action comedy on Lupin and other shows, and then they were given DuckTales, and then after 5 years on DuckTales and Tiny Toons, they mastered what the American style, what the overseas teams wanted it to be. So then Animaniacs is them at their height before most people leave or the budgets get too different. Like, yeah.
Before no one wants to pay for that anymore.
Yeah. What happened on Freakazoid was we got to see what happens halfway through season 1 of Freakazoid. They're like, we shouldn't be paying this much.
No.
We're not going to do it anymore.
Why is the show so expensive?
Yeah.
So yeah, a big shout out to Genevieve Tsai, who is like the overall character designer. Again, another pro follow on Twitter. Her art is so cool and great.
Yeah, I follow her, yeah.
She designed a lot of the characters. She really tweaked the new designs to fit with the TMS look. A lot of it, she pulled like the asymmetrical like facial features are a big TMS thing. Like one eye, the eyes are kind of like askew and one is bigger than the other.
Yeah,
That's
I love
a big
that.
TMS thing.
Yeah. It's so sharp and cool on them. I love that.
And yeah, like check her out on Twitter. Great stuff. And she also, I believe she also designed the anime versions of the characters, which are amazing.
I wish they'd done it a little more even. And that they were so, what I always love when you can tell an anime parody is done by people who watch anime or done by people who don't watch anime. And,
yes.
Like when Wacko moves around like Majin Buu very specifically, I'm like, this is by people who watch anime and like it.
There's like Gurren Lagann stuff in there too.
Yeah.
Studio Trigger stuff. Yeah, amazing. So yeah, check out the Genevieve Tsai's Twitter. It's very good, and Instagram as well. And so anime pre-production and post-production happened in Burbank. But there's a lot of outsourcing going on in terms of like the grunt work of animation. So I can't go into all the studios they used, but I can at least list them. So there's Yao's Animation in Toronto, Tonic DNA in Montreal, Titmouse in Vancouver, Snipple Animation Studios in Manila in the Philippines, and 3 studios in Seoul.
Wow.
So there's Digital Emation, Tiger Animation, and Seiram Animation. So,
oh, man. Okay. At least Seiram, I guess they do digital as well. I know. I would assume Titmouse always works with Emation on, or at least they do on Venture Brothers. It's always been digital Emation on Venture Brothers. But yeah, those are a lot. I mean, those are the best of that type of thing. I think Snipple is one of the ones that does DuckTales as well. Like, so they're at least going with the best in this digital format. Again, do I wish it was like the Ink and Paint past? Of course I do. Of course. But hey, look, it is what it is.
We can't completely bring back the 90s, although we're trying. We're
trying our best.
And it seems like there were major production problems.
Sure does.
Because according to Rob Paulson, voice recording didn't start until May of this year.
Of this year? That is nuts.
It feels like things were just caught in post-production. Or sorry, in pre-production for a long time, because we're going to talk about the people composing the music. The recording didn't start until like right before COVID happened. Only 3 episodes were recorded in person with the orchestra.
That's insane.
Yeah. So
wow. I can't understand that.
I don't know how it happened, but yeah, it felt like it was like a hurry up and wait kind of thing,
Yeah, I mean, well, that to a degree sounds like working around Steven Spielberg. I think that is like a bottleneck that we're talking about here.
It's true, yeah. I wonder if like a bunch of things are written and then he went off to make Ready Player One. It was like, well, we just have to sit at our desks until he comes back. I have worked like 3 or 4 jobs where I was hired to do a thing, but the work wasn't ready yet, so I just sit in a seat and look at my phone until the work shows up.
And what are you gonna do? Like, you can't crack the whip on Spielberg. Like, you can't make him. He's the guy. Like, stuff happens when he wants it to happen.
He killed Roger Rabbit. Do you want him to kill Animaniacs?
He can do it with just a thought. He'd be if at any point Spielberg's like, I don't want to do this anymore, it would just not happen. It's you got to keep Steven happy.
Yeah, that's why I thought there were like, oh, this can't be good, because like in the spring they were talking about voice recording. I'm like, isn't this airing this year?
Yeah, I definitely thought this was going to be just have way more problems than it did. That I think maybe that also makes me like it more than I might have if it had come out with a normal schedule, or it didn't seem like there were any problems. When you see all these like read between the lines kind of problems on the show, when it finally comes out and it's not terrible, you're like, wow, they really succeeded getting this thing out the door.
So other talent I want to talk about are the composers for this series. So the music is by mainly Julie and Steve Bernstein and a 30-piece orchestra. And I don't want to beat a dead horse because we talked about this with like Freakazoid and Pinky and the Brain and Tiny Toons, but like a full orchestra adds so much texture to this show. it is, I mean, I think that's what kept me watching, because it's just such a great experience just to hear everything constantly scored when nothing is like that. Like, it was weird to go from watching all of this to watching a new Simpsons, and I'm like, God, it's so quiet.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I mean, Simpsons was not constantly scored ever, but it's just like, man,
but
it adds so much, and I love it so much.
Seeing movements just go like, I mean, probably when we listen to the voice clips in this one, it'll be much easier to visualize the action happening, because a note will happen when a step is done, or when like anything happens. I'm really glad Hulu would never, no show on Hulu would get a full orchestra, and I mean their live action shows wouldn't get a full orchestra.
Steven Spielberg, like, I'm glad he put the hammer down on this, because if they tried to fake this with like synth, it would not have the same effect.
Now, I mean, there's lots of great shows now that have, they have a dedicated composer who works in synth and does great work, but I always wonder with them, if they had a 30-piece orchestra, what could they do, or even just a 10-piece orchestra.
So Julie and Steve Bernstein are the proteges of the late Richard Stone. So Richard Stone was the lead composer for Animaniacs.
Right.
He passed away in 2001 before 9/11. So whenever someone dies in 2001, I'm like, did they check out in time? And he did.
That's
just in time.
Good for him.
Yes.
At least.
I wish he was still alive, by the way.
Yes, yeah, we're joking.
Very super amazingly talented guy. Like, he co-wrote the Animaniacs and Freakazoid theme songs with Tom Ruger. Like, so many amazing compositions. He is like essential to the spirit of that era, and he was like basically the next Carl Stalling.
Man, getting his proteges is at least, that's a step in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, so Julie and Steve Bernstein basically wrote additional music for that entire era of WB animation, including Animaniacs.
All right, so they were also original composers on it too, sort of like how Shirley Walker, R.I.P., was she was a Danny Elfman student who then got to just be the Batman composer.
And any other composer on the series, for the most part, was either trained by Richard Stone or Randy Rogel, who is the songwriter for the most part. And he's in one episode of this.
That's right. Yeah, the worst episode.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah.
So shockingly, most of the episodes were scored remotely, and I want to talk about this. So there's an article on BigShinyRobot.com. I've never heard of this website, but they interviewed Julie and Steve Bernstein, and so they managed to complete 2.5 episodes live before COVID lockdown happened in March. And here's what Julie says. Quote, and since that day in March, we have been doing our sessions remotely with 30-plus musicians who are each in their own homes, sending us the tracks. We prepare them for a reference track and a click track. We do some preparation. We get it to them. They record each individually in their own space, which, of course, they don't all have the same space. They record remotely. They send us the tracks. We assemble them, do a little bit of editing if there's anything needed, because the musicians don't all have the same microphones or programs or acoustics. But I think we have got it down to a science. We have everyone working on it and knowing exactly what to do to make it sound good. So, speaking of production problems, imagine getting 30 different tracks from 30 different recording artists and assembling them into like your GarageBand file of your scored episode. That sounds like an incredible amount of work.
To have this, and that sounds insane to me. Like, we've seen the videos, a lot of viral videos have happened during this time of, people play the original musicians for the Cowboy Bebop theme song, get together and they play it. And you get to see like the 6 pieces all recorded solo and then mixed together. That looks really hard. To multiply that by 5, or 6. That's crazy.
And you can't conduct. You can't conduct.
That's a huge part
They're
of it.
conductors. So it's just I guess we trust you to just do this on your own. So I'm surprised. It sounds good. Finding that out halfway through watching the series, and I have that in mind watching the rest. I'm like, I can't tell it was all assembled remotely. Maybe it would sound a little better if it wasn't. But man, that's nuts. And it was nuts that they started recording the music in March.
I can't believe they record. I guess the scoring is one of the last thing, unless it's a musical sequence.
Yeah.
The scoring is usually the last thing to come in, I suppose. But yeah, how much of this being produced in 2020 is crazy for me to hear in this. Wow.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know if the voices were recorded remotely. It doesn't seem like they were, because if they were recorded in May, then I heard a story that Maurice LaMarche was telling about like showing up for the first recording, and he wore his like Pinky t-shirt to be supportive, and Rob Paulson showed up and he was wearing his The Brain t-shirt, and they like embraced each other. So it's just like, I think they were socially distanced but recording together.
I could see. I think Yeah, I think they probably had some like safer recordings like we do.
I mean, all of the guys working on the show are now elderly,
Yes.
the voice actors, outside of Jess Harnell, who was the baby, meaning he's now like 57.
Yeah, it's still an amazing mane of hair on that Jess
Yes.
Harnell. Yeah, no,
And I went online. He is a total wife guy. He loves his wife.
That's great. But I mean, yeah, I would certainly hate that if the recording of a new Animaniacs ended up infecting any member of the staff.
We must keep them alive.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is my very
Woo!
surprisingly in-depth history of this and our complicated thoughts on a series that we both generally enjoy.
Yeah, generally enjoy, and I think we're covering like the best episode of the run here too. So this was a really good pick to do. Especially like I think it's the direction on it is the best, and I look forward to talking about the director in the next sequence, the next section too. Yeah,
me too. So we're gonna take a brief break and come back to talk about episode 8 of the Animaniacs reboot.
It's time for Animaniacs, and we're zany to the max. So just sit back and relax, you'll laugh till you collapse. We're Animaniacs. Come join the Warner Brothers
And the Warner Sister Dot.
Just for fun, we run around the Warner movie lot. They lock us in the tower whenever we get caught, but we break loose and never lose, and now you know the plot. We're Animaniacs. Dot has wit and Yakko yaks. Wacko packs away the snacks. Our careers have made comebacks. We're Animaniacs. Meet Pinky and the Brain, who wants to rule the universe. A brand new cast who tested well in focus group research. Gender balanced, pronoun neutral, and ethnically diverse. The trolls will say we're so passe, but we did meta first. We're Animaniacs. You should see our new contracts. We're zany to the max, there's baloney in our slacks. We're Animani, totally insane,
Illegal in Bahraini.
Animaniacs, those are the facts.
Now at McDonald's, the Animaniacs are back.
And we're wackier than ever.
We really shouldn't be such strangers.
That's right. Let me extend my greetings.
Now you can get a break and your kids get their favorite characters with the Animaniacs Hamburger Happy Meal for just $1.99. You can bend them, push them, squish them, or stretch them.
Wait a minute. Is that in our contract?
One with each Happy Meal you buy your kids, just $1.99.
I'm stuffed. I couldn't eat another hamburger. Now that's a stretch.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our ad for this What a Cartoon episode all about the Animaniacs reboot. I am one of your hosts, Bob Mackey, and I'm fighting the PC police who are censoring Minerva Mink. And who is here with me today?
Hello, Bob.
Oh.
It's Henry Gilbert here as well.
You won't be hearing that in this podcast, the famous Hello Nurse. But yeah, thanks for listening to this ad. If you want to hear more of our podcasts and get them a week ahead of time and ad-free, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. Sign up there. You'll get just that for $5 a month. And you'll also get instant access to everything we've made behind the $5 paywall since we started this Patreon in summer of 2017. That's 3.5 years of Patreon bonuses available to you immediately. And that includes all of our limited miniseries, which are Talking Critic, Talking of the Hill, Talking Mission Hill, Talking Futurama Season 2 Part 1, and Part 2 is currently unraveling right now behind the Patreon paywall. That is 9 new episodes of Talking Futurama waiting for you for $5 a month at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. Over 100 bonus podcasts. If you have time to kill over the holidays, we have a lot of hours for you to kill it with. Hours of podcasting. So yes, we also have a $10 level. If you sign up for $10 a month, you'll get all of the $5 rewards, plus access to one extra long podcast once a month, only for patrons of that level or higher. And what is that, Henry?
Why, Bob, you're talking about the What a Cartoon Movie, our monthly podcast where we cover an animated feature film in the same level of detail that we cover the Animaniacs this week. We've covered so many different films. Most recently, last week even, you can hear us talk about Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit, that stop-motion classic. At the end of this month, you'll get to hear us talk about the controversial anime film, The End of Evangelion, and so many in the back catalog. Over 2 years worth of What a Cartoon movies are at your disposal if you're a $10 and up subscriber at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. If I may point you into that back catalog, if you enjoy this chat about 90s cartoons, I bet you'll really enjoy the one we did for Tiny Toons, How I Spent My Vacation. A lot of fun talk in there. Our one for a Goofy movie, also really good. Batman, Mask of the Phantasm, and a whole bucket load of other ones you can listen to at the $10 level. at patreon.com/talkingsimpsons.
And if you've never signed up for Patreon before, it is so easy to do. And once you sign up, you're given access to a code that you can access anytime you want. You just drop that code into whatever you use to listen to podcasts. And that way you can download all of our bonus podcasts alongside of your free podcast as part of your podcasting lifestyle. And Patreon also has an app you can download for any smart device. And you can listen to our bonus podcast there as well. But either way you do it, it is so easy to access all the bonus content waiting for you at patreon.com/talkingsimpsons. So thank you so much for sitting through this break. We'll let you get to the Warner Brothers and their sister Dot rising from the dead to entertain you with our look at the Animaniacs reboot.
They ran out of ideas for fresh new shows, so Hollywood did the only thing it knows. Murphy Brown, Melrose Place, Gilmore Girls lost in space. That's so Ravens what they're craving.
I know that's a show worth saving.
I vote X-Files for a comeback.
Your company's still a real snack.
Would the Golden Girls be darker if we resurrect B. Arthur? Reboot it, renew it, reshoot it, redo it, and reuse it, retool it, abuse it, dispute it. If you want to make some easy cash, just recycle and rehash. Repeat it, reinstate it, reheat it, recreate it. There's no need to feel frustrated, simply.
So we're back to talk all about Animaniacs Episode 8, and I guess we should talk about the opening, which...
very quiet 8 seconds at the start of it.
Yes,
It's very
just
confusing.
Clear the room, everyone calm down. I just want the Bugs Bunny WB like bump, 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 bump. You know, just like you're ready for a good time.
I wonder with all like the logos and stuff at the start if some of that is just like filler of legal BS, and I still wonder like how much does Warner regret giving this to Hulu instead of having it be on HBO Max? You know,
Hulu wants you to know like we present this.
I wonder if this ends up on HBO Max like in 5 years, and they just have to have a giant Hulu money joke in the first episode that just has to be on HBO Max.
Can't we change that somehow?
Can you redraw that to be a pile of money that says HBO Max?
So yeah, the opening, we brought it up earlier in the podcast, but it's essentially the same up until Meet Pinky and the Brain Who Want to Rule the Universe.
Yeah.
There's a few different shots, like so you're right, Henry, and I had the same thought too, that like when they're just like vector tracing the original animation, you're like, wow, this looks amazing. But then when they redo shots, like instead of them tickling Dr. Scratch and Sniff in the chair, it's Ralph. I'm like, well, that looks way different than the animation that you're mimicking like a second earlier.
Yeah, the moments where they don't I wouldn't have changed the song opening other than like lyric. They do make lyrical changes, but I'd keep that as the opening. But if you're gonna mimic the TMS stuff, it only makes the other stuff look worse by comparison, at least to the nostalgic audience that you're appealing to, I think.
And they did change lyrics in the original series. Like they got rid of the Bill Clinton plays the sax one with like we've got stacks of income tax or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And then when Pinky and the Brain got their own series, instead of Meet Pinky and the Brain Who Want to Rule the Universe, there was a lyric about Dr. Scratch and Sniff and Hello Nurse.
Oh yeah. The kid and in the Kids WB, they started doing more clip packages in the opening, which like just damaged the opening like animation wise. And so it was always a modular opening. So these changes aren't even like, oh, they changed the opening for the first time ever. That's not what they're doing. And of course they can't talk about Bill Clinton playing the sax now. Instead,
we can't talk about Bill Clinton at all anymore.
They talk about the careers that made comebacks, which at least their tombstones say 1930 as their birth year.
That's right. Yeah. See, it's weird that they reference that in the opening, but we don't actually get a taste of their classic roots.
It's another thing that feels like an overcorrection, but I mean, it comes from a good place, is changing Dot is cute to Dot has wit. Like, I don't know. Dot can be cute. She's cute. She says she's cute all the time.
Yeah, I don't think that was like a bad element of her character. She was just like a very like confident woman, you know.
Yeah.
And like Yakko is the clever one, right? So it's weird. It's like Dot Yakko yaks, but Dot has wit. It seems like there's a lot of crossover there.
Yeah, in general, I think Yakko. Well, this episode has jokes about Yakko being like. Yakko was always on top. He was the Bugs Bunny who didn't get injured. So when there's like some jokes about like, a Daffy Duck kind of injured reaction from Yakko. It doesn't feel exactly right for Yakko. Like, Yakko is always on top.
It did, yeah. He does get like zapped and injured a bunch more than he did in the original series.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the opening, they do a great job with their extra stuff, even though it looks a bit different. You can tell the most work goes into this opening like it did with the original series. And they even have like the shot of like a bunch of the like antagonists sitting in a bunch of seats, and like Yakko is like hitting their heads with like drums.
Yeah,
drumsticks.
I like that. Yeah, it's the xylophone on the heads of the new characters.
And I was thinking, doesn't that happen in the Freakazoid opening as well?
Oh, it does. Yeah, that exact same shot.
But it's also like a xylophone.
I think it is. Maybe I'm getting them conflated. In Freakazoid, it was a xylophone for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, the new lyrics are fine. Like they're talking about how they're updating for the times, which again, I don't need to be constantly reminded it's a reboot.
Yes, yeah. Gender balanced, pronoun neutral, and ethnically diverse. The trolls will say it was so passe, but we did meta first. It's all right line. And you get to see a please get a life foundation type dude in there too.
And it's funny because like I'm looking at it now and I'm just like noticing some new differences in that like there's baloney in our slacks where just like in the original shot it's just like there's like 30 characters behind them all singing.
Yes, yeah.
And in this one it's just like, no, just the 3. We don't have those characters anymore.
Well, at least now they use like, instead of it just being loose baloney, it's like them cutting the baloney to put it in there. But yeah, the same with like, we're Animani, totally insane-y. That used to be showing off 60 characters screaming to the, and now it's just like, it's us with like signs around and we're like wiggling our arms.
I do really miss their strut down the football field with all the characters. I do miss that little part of the opening. It's like so like in love with itself and self-congratulatory.
I do like them bragging about their new contracts. I do like that.
2 seasons.
I also was watching the Hey Macadamia, the Macadamia Nut song.
Yeah.
And that one too was like them showing off how many characters they've got. And also just, John McClanahan that too, yeah. But in general, him showing off how good he is at drawing dance animation for all the different, clearly a lot of work was put into Hello Nurse and Minerva Minx dance in that. But I will say, if you watch the Hip Hippos dance or Ralph do the Macadamia, it's also very well done, and their curves move just as well as the curves of the ladies.
All for a joke with a very short shelf life.
Yes, I've watching it. I'm like, every lyric. It's not just that this is a general Macarena parody. It is that it takes every lyric of the Macarena and finds a way to make it about Dot being crazy as a macadamia nut. Anyway, that's the old show I'm talking about.
One more thing about the opening before we go on to the full cartoon is that they still have the pre-Animaniacs last sung line. They have that joke in there.
Oh, yeah.
That's still there, so it's worth watching the credits for that. And I don't get the skip credits button for this show.
Oh, yeah. Maybe it's a demandment of Spielberg, like no skipping these credits.
Yeah, so this one is illegal in Bahraini.
It's just funny to hear Yakko say the name of a country. That I have to say, that's one bit that I'm like, you get one of these jokes, please don't do 7 of them. But they did so many jokes of like, I could sing that old song I used to do. This is like that old. It's not only that Yakko gets to be like, hey, remember all the country songs I sang? But it's also like, even Wacko does, I could sing every capital, mate. Like, everybody references every song they did.
Even in the WB run, I remember like they were referencing the Fox stuff though, because it was well, I guess our characters sing clever songs, and like one of the gags was like Yakko is going to sing every word in the dictionary.
Yes, that's
and they keep like cutting back to him, and he's very tired.
It's just him. Yeah, in the WB run, I think it's when they did their Beauty and the Beast parody, where it starts out with, it's just a joke that Tress MacNeille is having trouble saying Princess Angelina, Contessa Luisa, Francesca, Banana Fanafo Fresca the Third. Hey, I just said it.
Ooh, nice.
And that had no editing. I did that live. But
I can confirm that.
But the joke is that she kept saying it wrong, and then she's like, oh yeah, I bet, could you do it? And then Yakko just does it instantly. She's like, fine, Mr. United States, Canada, blah, blah, blah. Like, it was a good just in-joke about how the other actors are jealous of how Rob Paulsen can just do everything perfectly all the time.
He's got a great amount of control over those pipes. And also there is no so the ending credits are kind of the same as the original show, where it's just like a shot of the water tower and the day changes to night, but there's no final gag.
Yeah.
There's no outro gag, and there's no wacky credit. I was waiting for the wacky credit, not in any of the credits that I saw.
I was really pissed off that there was no wacky credit, and also that you can't skip the credits, but you have to make the watch credits choice even on the I want to see the voice cast. That really pissed me off that it does on the voice cast, especially because occasionally there's current voice actors, and Lauren Lapkus does a really good alien in one of the Pinky and the Brain shorts.
Oh, she's in it. Okay.
Yeah, she's one of the friendly orange alien people that Pinky meets. She's the feminine voiced of them, and she's really funny. But yeah,
I just this is just the oldest complaint in the book, but I hate the credit skip, because you're watching it and then it zooms down to the corner and they do you want to watch the credits? It's I also want to watch the credits I missed finding the watch credits button. Then you have to go back 10 seconds, and
I hate that.
My problems are the worst problems anyone has suffered. I want to watch the credits. So the first cartoon is Who Donut, and directed by Katie Rice, who also directed everything in this episode. So it'll be a real easy director's corner for her. Unfortunately, we got to talk about Spumco again.
Yeah.
Because she's one of the artists I knew about from following John Kricfalusi and Spumco in the post-Ren and Stimpy world. She was one of the shining stars of that post-Ren and Stimpy era for the studio. And I would see a ton of her art posted on John K's blog. And, I'm sure she does not want to be associated with him anymore, and she's spoken out about him, but that is just how I know her. Yeah. And that is where I saw her art, and she is amazing, and I was expecting her when is her show coming, and this is it.
No, it's a very unfortunate thing that such a talented artist is her, and I do think I was looking at all the different directors on this, and I think her episodes are the best episodes, and she's the best director on it. And I think it's very unfortunate, just societally, that such a talented person has to unfortunately have to have all of this shitty baggage from her assaulter. It's just awful. I hate that.
It's a real shame, and I want to talk to her about the show, and I just hate that she has to be associated with that, because she's on those adult party cartoon DVDs as one of the uncomfortable young women John K pulls into the frame. This is Katie.
It's awful.
She's the future of Spumco.
I hate that so much. Yeah, that's how I knew her first too, from watching those things and hearing him talk to her about how good she is at drawing, especially the women in the Spumco style. And she's just a very talented animator. And I was, especially after she did the very brave thing of going on the record about John K's crimes, I'm glad she also got this job so she can show off her art to the world and people can know what an artist she is, not just from the headlines about the person who did awful things to her. She can be known for her talent.
That should not define her, and I feel kind of bad bringing it up, but it's something you have to talk about just because it's there. And but that's where I discovered her, and her first animation role was being a layout artist on the Ren and Stimpy adult party cartoon. So the art in that cartoon is fine, the writing is bad, and a lot of people worked very hard on it and made no money because of John K. So
well, anything produced in there that's good, it sounds like it was pretty much in spite of John K.
And just doing it over and over and over again. So she had a lot of crossover with Gabe Swar because they're both Spumco alums, and they worked on things she worked on things like The Buzz on Maggie, My Life as a Teenage Robot, El Tigre, The Many Adventures of Manny Riviera, The Mighty Bee, Fanboy and Chum Chum, Kung Fu Panda, Legends of Awesomeness, and most recently DC Superhero Girls.
That's right. Oh man, that Mighty Bee show is the Spumco-iest of shows not made by Spumco.
It's like the secret Ren and Stimpy sequel for children.
Yes, yeah. But she's great. I am really glad that the third short in this one, I think that really lets her show off, especially.
Yeah, her style is very apparent in that short. So outside of her 2017 short, Camp We Don't Want Ya, these are her only other credits as an animation director.
Okay.
Sorry, it's been a long recording so far. We haven't gotten to the episode yet.
I should check out that pilot of hers.
It's online. It's online. I believe she made it with her husband.
Okay, I got to check that out. Yeah. I did want to mention one of the writers on this, Jess Lacher. I at least know from Twitter that she's, I believe, comedy buddies with past Talking Simpsons guest Heather Ann Campbell. I saw Heather Ann Campbell going "Hey, big ups to Jess for getting on the new Animaniacs show." So, wanted to just shout that out.
So yeah, she's one of the 3 writers that is on this episode or on this segment, and like a lot of these folks don't have a ton of credits. So Jess, her only other credits for writing are for the show called The Detour, which I was not aware of, and also Take My Wife, which that's the Cameron Esposito.
Yeah, Cameron Esposito and Rhea Butcher thing,
yeah.
Which I think by the time the last season came out, they had divorced.
The wife was taken.
Yes, yeah.
The title was true.
Yeah, I think Rhea Butcher. They are a real a comrade, I'll say, on Twitter. It's been cool to see Butcher go that way.
So Greg White feels like the most senior writer, although he only started writing for television in the 2010s. So his first role as a writer was on the Comedy Central show Ugly Americans, which I think is a solid like B show.
Sure. I'd agree with that.
With really good animation too. So Greg White also wrote for the Mad series for children, the Mad magazine cartoon.
Right, okay.
Then there's a lot of that actually.
I didn't realize they made so much of that.
Of course, we have our good friend Brickleberry. Everyone had to write on Brickleberry.
It always shows up in these.
Brickleberry was like community service for comedy writers in the 2010s. It's like you got to do 5 Brickleberries before we let you back in here.
If you can make it on Brickleberry, you've got a career.
Yes. Wander Over Yonder and Unikitty. So he's got the most credits, and then Andrew Barbeau. I'm going to say his name is Barbot. So Barbeau is probably it. Another live action writer wrote for the series Playing House. That's Jessica St. Clair and Lena Parham.
Lena Parham.
Parham, yes.
Yeah. They're both super funny. I watched a couple episodes of that, but it was like, how do I even watch this? It's not anywhere. I had to jump through so many hoops to watch that show. I only watched like 3 episodes, even though Jess and Lennon are both very funny.
I love their comedy Bang Bang appearances as those characters, which were spun off into a separate podcast.
Yes, yeah. I forgot.
Wrote for that and The Last OG, which is the Tracy Morgan show.
That show, yeah.
So again, like I'm not saying these are bad people, but it's weird that like not a lot of animation writers on this.
Yeah. It sounds like the one person who wrote on like Unikitty and some other cartoon stuff, but mostly this does sound like a lot of more live action and adult folks writing for it. There was something too I couldn't tell in the tone of the show. In the first episode, they do get to say hell in the show, but mostly this show is pitched at the same level of age demographics as the original show.
I was surprised, like the raunchiness and the dark humor was not any like more heightened than it was in the 90s show. I was expecting like a lot more mean-spirited stuff. Not really. At least I didn't notice.
Well, and the sex appeal is much lower.
Yeah,
I think.
They took out the damn horniness.
Maybe they learned their lesson from adult party cartoon. They're like, let's not change the age range too much on where we're going with this show.
Yeah, they still wanted the balance of like the audience for Animaniacs, the original series, 25% of it was adults, and they wanted to keep like that much content for adults in it.
Yeah.
So this cartoon begins with the sun rising on the water tower, and Dot and Yakko are woken up by Wacko freaking out at something, and good screaming with Jess Harnell. I mean, he's getting older, but the pipes still work.
He's working hard on that one. It's also just so crazy. Again, seeing that water tower, because we have like slept across the street from it. Like we could actually like just
That's
look
true.
at that shot in the morning.
And every time I passed it, I was like, "That's where the Animaniacs live."
Yeah. It was fun. It was if only the Alf executive producer we knew was there.
He could give us a tour.
Yeah.
That could be an Airbnb we could stay in. They don't understand what's going on with Wacko, and so Yakko basically just turns the volume down on his screaming with a remote. And that's a fun gag. I like that.
I also like that they wake up Yakko and Dot. Their beds are like a hammock and a ball pit.
Yeah,
that's funny.
But it's still a bunk bed.
Yeah, and also the Spanish language thing is cute. I also like that they, as a concept, I love when they throw out like Dot will say that could be a good concept episode, and they just go like, nah, we're not doing that. Like you get to see the writing pitch happen in the show, which I mean that also goes back to the original show where they would just pull out the script and be like, who wrote this crap? Or they would just cut to the writer's room and go like, I don't know.
Or they just would do bits.
Yeah,
like, let's just do some improv in this scene. But so we find out what's going on. Turns out there's a donut crime in progress.
Somebody ate my donuts. Maple bacon, tarragon fried chicken caramel, goat cheese, and just a soupçon of mustache cream. Oh no,
Wacko, were these designer donuts?
Someone must have snuck in while I was asleep and eaten them.
Step back, boys. This is an active crime scene. Now, to look for forensic evidence. Yakko, turn on the black light. Nothing unusual there. Okay, I've isolated particulate matter from the crime scene, and judging from the crumb spatter, I say these donuts were eaten in the last 8 to 12 hours.
Wait a minute. Where were you guys last night?
It wasn't us.
Yeah, we had that blind date with those bats.
I didn't capture that part of it because there's a lot of bat screaming.
Just bat screaming, not the funny. The spumco-iness of it really came through in that shot where the waiter keeps dropping stuff as he screamed at. I was like, that really looks like a Ren and Stimpy kind of shot. But I like this general concept because this is like them interacting with the modern world, and this would have been totally fit in as an episode in the 90s, except for they bring in the extra idea of like Wacko would have eaten donuts at any time, but now he can have hipster artisan donuts, that's his thing. So you get an extra level of joke to it.
We didn't have those designer pastries in the 90s. We had hipsters, but they were different.
They weren't as focused on maple bacon donuts then, which I feel like I did just the last time I was in Portland, I sampled a maple bacon donut.
I think in the 90s there'd be jokes about like, can I just get a coffee flavored coffee?
Oh God, yeah.
You hipsters with your fancy coffees.
It would be a vintage. What's that mean? Yeah, they'd. But it's funny to see Yakko and Dot going on a blind date for some reason. Like a brother and sister going on a double date feels weird on a certain level.
With bat, and I guess it's just it's the pun is like blind as a bat, but it's just they will call back to that again for the final joke of this episode.
I was thinking about a subtle twist on how they would have written this before. I definitely think in the 90s show, Yakko would have taken the lead on being the forensic evidence person. It just would have been just taken as a given, like, well, Yakko's the lead character, so he's the one who would do all the CSI stuff. But for the rest of this, the lead investigator is Dot. Like, she's the one doing the primary, interrogation and all this CSI stuff, which now that like these CSI jokes are retro jokes now.
Yeah.
Like, these are 2007 kind of
I was thinking that too. Just like, what year is this? But I mean, it's just been part of our life forever, the CSI stuff now at this point.
Yeah. It's as much an institution as The Simpsons is now, honestly.
So, Wacko buys their alibi.
I love that. Well, that's the strongest alibi I've ever had.
And he wants to turn the culprit's face into mashed potatoes with butter and gravy, which is actually one of the donut flavors. So,
man,
Voodoo Donuts would do all this shit. There'd be like a potato trough in the middle of the donut or something.
This is just making me hungry now. I mean, that pink box is one of the most delicious, salivating things you can see.
Overrated. Blue Star is the best donuts.
Oh, well, sure. I just mean in general, a pastry, when you see somebody walk into work with a pink box, you're like, somebody bought donuts, oh boy.
I'm excited. But yeah, you can try Voodoo. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's just the experience is fun. You can just say you did it.
No, I had the Blue Star. Well, I had the airport Blue Star. That's when
Still good.
For the 20 hours I spent in Portland the last time, the only time I've been there, I should have given myself more time there, but I was like, just for the show. But at least I bought them in the airport and could feel extra opulent of like, I'm a donut delivery guy from the airport to taking it all the way home so my husband could enjoy the donuts
Imported
too.
donuts. So Dot tells Wacko they're going to find out who stole the donuts, and they have to because they have about 8 minutes to fill. So thankfully, this is not a low effort cartoon. So
yeah, they actually do fill the 8 minutes pretty well, and I do like that they recognize that Yakko can't stop doing puns because I think that is also the person Rob Paulson is. Though the violence done to Yakko, it's like, not to say the Yakko like never got hit with a mallet, but it really was Yakko's the older brother. In his position in the old show, he does the violence to others.
He's usually not damaged this much, but yeah, he says we got a real whodunit on our hands, and then like that's when Wacko and Dot both pull out their pun guns and zap him, and there's a whole lot more zapping in this next clip.
We need to make a list of suspects.
I guess you could say we have a new tenant.
Listen up, chump. You got a real problem, and it's me.
Are you suggesting I'm being defiant? I promise, no more antics.
I think that's enough punishment.
But,
Come on, we have to follow that ant.
The music cues all over that is so good.
Yeah, I just like the jokes are tedious, what they're supposed to be, but just the many deformations Yakko goes through as he's zapped.
Great drawings.
And I love anytime someone dies and their ghost rises out of their body and someone does violence to the ghost.
Yeah,
it's always a good gag.
In a way, she resuscitated him by zapping him one more time, but that was so. I also love that Dot even does a pun herself just to be like, "Yeah, I can do it. What you gonna do about it, Yakko?" And then them chasing an ant that feels like some classic Animaniacs silliness there.
Yeah, even with all of these television writers on this show. I mean, it was a writer-driven show before, but like there's still a lot of bits where it's like, oh, there's not a lot of dialogue here. It's mostly carried by the animation, and that's one of them. Just like hiding in different ways. They're following the ant. Every time the ant turns around, they're like something new.
And it only works if it's drawn funnily, of just them being like, I think the bit that made me laugh the most was just that the ant always saw them. They were doing a terrible job of hiding. And also the Yakko as a stop sign. I think that was my favorite design.
And so the ant walks into Ralph's little like guard booth, and Ralph shakes the crumb free from this ant and eats it. So that's pretty disgusting.
Yeah, the Ralph and I mentioned all the other ones except Frank Welker. Like Welker does, he's always good. And he's really good here. I feel bad for him. He doesn't get to be Plots because I think he was always pretty funny as the as the big boss.
Another tie to the Spumco world, because Ralph is patterned after Ralph Bakshi, who a lot of the people worked with.
That's right. That's why he's so disgusting and horrible. And he gets to say duh. He even gets to say duh in this one too. But I like that he's his little jar of gummies says now with feathers. I like that guy.
Yes, he didn't eat the donuts because he's on the paleo diet, which means he can only eat things shaped like dinosaurs, which funny joke. And we get like there were no vitamin gummies in 1993.
Yeah, that's true. We had to break our teeth on those chalky ass Flintstones gummies.
I don't need gummy vitamins. I just grind up those disgusting flavored one-a-days in my mouth and just swallow it whole.
That's how I've been taking my apple cider vinegar. I've been getting it in gummy form now, which is a lot of would you stop saying gummy so much? That's what the listeners are saying.
Lace and gummy technology.
And speaking of like the Spumco-y stuff, like the teeth, the inside teeth thing is again a very disgusting but well done shot of just the hideous teeth Ralph has.
Yeah, Dot is looking for donut particles in his mouth, and she's like, to save you some money on a DNA kit, it's British all the way back.
Oh God.
So another throwback, some nice big book of British smiles humor.
Yeah,
right?
I like that. Yeah, and also like Dot throwing out all of the movie plot twists like that. Tress just really good. Just this whole episode, she's the best voice actor, I think.
I think so. And so they're gonna go question Ralph.
Well, if you didn't do it, then who did?
Follow the money.
Don't get smart with me.
I couldn't if I wanted to.
Poor Ralph. He's just a patsy.
That's right. Kaiser Sose, red pill, blue pill. Forget it, Ralph. It's Chinatown.
What's it?
Have a nice flight.
Going to the skydiving thing also is a great change of like this is just going to be a bunch of exposition, so to get into animation is good.
It's just like, well, how do they get to the next scene? Well, for whatever reason, they drop the walls away from his guard booth, and he's suddenly up in the sky, and then they can just fall to the next location.
That's a great job security on Ralph, too, that he's been the same Warner guard ever for the 30 years now, because he was in a 91 Tiny Toons as well.
I gotta say, on the Fox lot, the guards were not sleepy. They were helpful.
They were so nice.
And they didn't question why we were just walking around.
Yeah, I guess. Well, for them, they're like, we just got bought by Disney. We can't care that
Those
much.
dorks must be Simpsons writers.
Yeah, that's right. They're walking around with their bag of Simpsons merch they just bought. It's another guy spent $400 on an animation cell.
Only go up in value. They're falling through the sky, and they have to go all the way to the top, even though they're falling to the bottom.
There's a great gag too that you can see they have their parachutes, but you see Ralph is splatted on the ground in like the bottom right-hand corner.
Oh, I must have missed that.
Yeah, there's people like surrounding his corpse pretty much. they just left him to die.
He does return. So it's like, yeah, they have to go to the CEO, which we don't see enough of the CEO in the series. I thought she was going to play like so Thaddeus Plotz was the like classic cigar chomping studio executive that they had in the old series. Yeah, apparently he's dead because you can see his like picture behind her.
It definitely would imply that he has died. I mean, he was quite old in the old show.
And I don't know if the CEO has a name, but I like the like corporate feminism. They give her like just this weird. She is like a modern CEO.
Yes, yeah, that's. I did see on IMDb she's credited as like Nora Rita Narita.
Huh.
That she's also supposed to be like, I believe, Hispanic. It's an Hispanic. It's a Latina voice actor for it. But yeah, that's the joke. Replacing it with a woman that's modern enough. But in the first episode, when she says like, actually, I'm the type who pulls up the ladder behind me, that made me laugh even more because it's like, yeah, she's a woman in charge, but she's still a CEO, meaning she's a piece of shit. And that's what I like, that she's evil in the ways execs are now, which I really love, especially in this scene.
I don't care that your girlfriend's new nose fell into a subway toilet. We need that rewrite by the end of the day, or...
We know you ate my donuts. The only question is, how high does this thing go?
One moment, please. You think I would risk my chance to make it to the singularity by eating refined sugar?
We're not getting anywhere.
Maybe we need to go back to the beginning.
It's time for Animaniacs.
No, stop! I meant the hipster neighborhood where Wacko bought his donuts, you dumb whoever you are.
Okay, fine. And I'm not dumb.
So that's Frank Welker again.
Just Frank Welker's voice.
Yeah.
I really love her maniacal laughing, and that she's like, she's an Elon Musk person who has the pipe dream of the singularity, which means transcending your body and becoming an AI forever.
I mean, old CEOs were evil, but they didn't think they would live forever.
I mean,
like I am beyond death.
That was the joke about Disney with freezing himself, but Elon Musk isn't joking. Like, he and all of the other people like him, they're like, oh no, I will definitely live forever. I'm the one who's not gonna die.
I'm immortal. I'm that rich.
And that absolutely drives you insane, especially if you're going to deny yourself refined sugar or anything that's fun at all in your life. Then you'll be crazy before you become part of the singularity.
And then Yakko did that little weird voice straining thing, which I was just looking at random clips on YouTube, just like, refreshing myself on the series. And there's like a 15-minute reel of Yakko doing the
oh wow, you did that. Yeah.
So I can play a little bit of this, but there's like 15 minutes of this. So here's a tiny amount of this from YouTube.
Wacko, what does all this do exactly?
Also, from watching the Macadamia Nut song, in that they go like, instead of they go
So he doesn't do that all the time.
Yeah, I think that's the only one. This one in this episode, I think, might be the only reboot one he does. I don't know. Maybe Rob snuck it in other places. But I mean,
it's harder to do when you're older.
Maybe. Yeah. Well, it's also like, I don't think Pinky says Narfer Point all that much in this season either. Like, you hear him a couple times, but not so much here. But I do like them escaping through, like, using like a glass cutter to go out through the window. I think that shows like the limits of doing jokes with her as a comedic foil. Like, they could torture plots a lot, but when they try to do a scene with her, she instantly goes insane and actually scares them. So, like, you know what, jokes are done with her. No more jokes with her.
It is weird though to like examine their life on the lot, because if you're like a kid just watching this for the first time or not aware of the first series, you're like, why are these characters here? Like, why do they live here? I don't understand. Like, because it feels like so much of the original series was about showbiz, and this one really isn't.
That's true. Yeah. Even though you think there'd be more time for insider jokes, like, people know way more than they knew back then. I think in the 90s, I mean, I knew what the Warner Brothers lot was for filming stuff, maybe just because of the multiple Plucky Duck episodes that were about getting onto the Warner lot. And I mean, it did make it feel, when we went for that Conan thing to be on the Warner Brothers lot, it did feel special that day.
Yeah, I mean, like the original series was so insider Hollywood, they had like the pay or play contracts line and baked into every episode.
Yes.
Like I was 11, I don't know what that means.
It overshadowed the series forever, I think. But we learned the importance of pay or play contracts and how you get paid off if it doesn't happen.
Yeah, you get paid no matter what. So they go to a fun parody of a hipster donut shop, Cage-Free Donuts.
Very funny.
And there's got to be, making this in Burbank, there's got to be so many like hipster eateries all over the place.
We've walked around to several of them. Yeah, all these Burbank specifics we know so much better now that we've I think cumulatively spent 3 months in Burbank at this point.
True. We went to the Danny Trejo taco shop, which was not like super hipstery, but it was really good.
No, the Trejo tacos and the Trejo donuts both were really good.
Danny Trejo has the donut shop too. Yes, perfect.
All our guests enjoyed having a Danny Trejo donut of I remember Sungwon Cho enjoying that Fruity Pebbles donut we got from there.
You're doxing his donut choice.
And Carrie Walgren is the cashier, I believe.
I was wondering who that was.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, Dot gets very conspiracy theory on this surly teenage clerk, and Yakko wants to know if any weird people have come in the store, and she points out only weird people come in here because of our weird operating hours, only when it rains, and donuts are all $6. We are in an abandoned brass factory. Yeah, brass factory.
Yeah, and I love seeing that the she's only so snotty because she's the daughter of the store owner too, so you don't have to feel too bad if they were mistreating just a regular cashier working for minimum wage. I'd feel a little bad that the Warners are so mean to that person, but them putting in that she's just the daughter of the owner, I'm like, oh, so you're just some rich kid, forget it, I don't care.
Let's hear that in our upcoming clip.
While we're here, I might as well order 2 dozen sawdust donuts and another dozen of glazed squid ink.
Whatever.
You can charge all of that onto this.
I'm only accepting this because my boss is my super supportive dad, and I want to make him angry for no reason.
He takes a maple bite, he takes a squid ink bite, he takes a frosted bite, he takes all his bites.
Sugar crash positions!
Well, that didn't help him at all.
Fine. You be the sugar crash marshal from now on.
It's been a long day, sis. Maybe we should go to bed, too.
Ooh, can we watch some TV first? Please?
Fine.
Let's watch Animaniacs.
That feels like it could just be cut out to be an ad for Animaniacs.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, it totally is a trailer moment. I love their positions as the Sugar Crash positions. That's a good gag. It also does kind of feel right I feel like if they'd done an episode in 99 or 2000, they'd have done a Chumbawamba reference like this.
Definitely, yeah. So I guess that's the deepest cut we're going to get in this segment at least.
Yeah, but when it's revealed, that also did feel like classic Animaniacs to me, because they would have this predictable ending and then they'd shit all over it.
Just what a waste of time.
Yeah, I like that.
There's a fun joke where they think they're watching TV, but Wacko has destroyed the TV with a sugar crash. So they're just sitting in front of the rubble, and they're turning on the subtitles, and it's all the Z's are coming across the screen because he's sleeping.
That's a good gag too, yeah. And I mean, in a way, they are watching what the episode of Animaniacs is that they are watching.
And let's hear all about this plot twist.
Plot twist. Wacko ate his own donuts.
That is so
Predictable. That's what I was going to say. It was. Beef Wellington, Belgium. My favorite color is lamppost. Whoa. So what should we do now?
Thanks for letting us pick the place.
No problem.
More tea, anyone? I want to go home.
So they're back at the blind date with the bats, except they're upside down. So when she pours the tea, it splashes up into her face.
That's a good gag that you don't realize they're upside down until she pours the tea. I think that the ending is so predictable. You would just go like, wacko just did it. But that they don't care. They're like, oh, so that's the answer. Anyway, let's just go back to the bats. Let's have a call back to the bats and call it a day. And Yakko and Dot are a really good combo in this. I think they didn't. They usually were a trio, or if they'd pair off, it would usually be Yakko and Wacko together. Mainly to wolf whistle and ladies, but here Dot and Yakko together are pretty funny. I think they're a good combo.
It. Yeah, they got the patter down again. With the showrunner being who he is, I don't like him. No, with the showrunner being who he is, I'm surprised that it's just so authentic to the original voice of the show. They really studied it. They had to have.
I do think if the voice actors were different, maybe we'd be feeling different. But maybe,
yeah,
I think the voice actors too, just by knowing these characters so well, that I'm not saying that during the recording they said, hey, Dot wouldn't say that, I'm going to say this. But I do think through performance, they can make it, even a joke that could be written that isn't correct for the character can feel more correct just through the performance by the masters of these characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did like that cartoon. Again, I chose it because it is the most down-to-earth Warner's cartoon, in that they're not in a fantastical setting or in a different time period. Just it's them on the lot in their home having fun.
Them, of all of the They Torture Somebody ones, I do think the Nils one is the funniest, but I think of the time displaced ones, the Marie Antoinette one is the best, just because all of the head jokes they do with her are pretty good.
I did like that one, yeah. So up next we get a Pinky and the Brain cartoon. So hooray for that! It's the Mouse-Churian Candidate, not a parody of the Manchurian Candidate, by the way.
Yeah, just in title it is. Otherwise, it's kind of its own thing. I mean, this the opening too. After they're done copying TMS, I really like the animation style they go with there, with all the digital different looks for them, pulling the DNA around.
The very stylized intro.
Yes,
I did really appreciate that. It's better than the series opening, which was a bunch of clips, I think.
Yeah. For the full series, it was, and then they would just put
words.
typeface over it. Yeah.
So directed by Katie Rice. The story is by Jess Latcher and Andrew Barbeau, and the teleplay is by two other people, Kathleen Chen, who only has this on her IMDb, only this series, and Brian Polk. They both seem like new writers, but Brian Polk, his last thing, the only other thing he did was he was a staff writer on that Tina Fey show, Great News, and I don't know what that is.
Man,
people seem to like it though.
That was a one season thing that was her thing after 30 Rock. I remember now. Yeah,
I don't like Tina Fey stuff. I'm sorry.
I used to.
I thought 30 Rock was overrated. Please don't unsubscribe. I'm sorry.
I think 30 Rock is a very good joke machine. When I've seen people share just one-off jokes that are in it, I'm like, boy, that's funny writing. But
I think the show would be funny if the constant circus music wasn't playing under every joke to let you know.
Well, what, is she going to fire her husband for writing the soundtrack? No.
I knew it.
Well, I think for Tina Fey, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt was the one where I'm just because that had really good jokes in it, and I liked that there was a heavy-set gay dude in the main lead having adventures. That was fun. But after the third episode about how people are too sensitive these days and how college kids ruin comedy, I was like, you know what, Tina, I'm good. I don't need this anymore. But them getting those two writers being teleplay credit, that also
speaks
to their juniorness. They're just all right, let's let them try out with getting the script.
We wrote an outline. You fill in the blanks here with the dialogue. I'm guessing that's how it worked.
And this episode again has great guest voice that feels like, oh, this person would have totally fit in the 90s had they been active then.
The guest voices are the one thing I didn't look into. Who is playing Julia?
Oh, it's Maria Bamford.
Oh, shit. Okay, no wonder.
She's doing her professional lady voice for most of it with Julia, and then Maria Bamford, when she freaks out, she's really good at a freak out too. They should have had more guest voices. There's not enough.
Do you know some of her earliest stuff? Maria Bamford was voice acting.
Really? Oh,
yeah, because we just did a Retronauts episode about Escape from Monkey Island, a 2000 2000 video game. She's in that voice acting.
So she just missed being in an Animaniacs as a voice actor then. No, she's a great voice actor. I mean, she's just a hilarious comedian and all that. But yeah, I love her. I love her professional woman voice when she takes on the then she's kind of that with Julia here. So credit to her. Thumbs up. She brings a lot to the role here.
And that opening song, a good way to kill 40 seconds. You don't have to reanimate.
Yeah.
So like 2 minutes of this Animaniac show is just like the credit sequence.
You're right. It's kind of a lot to do double credit sequences every single episode.
They did it in the old series.
It's true. Yeah. So it's only fair.
So this episode begins. We see two realistic mice frantically running through this maze. One gets pulled backwards into the darkness while J37 finds the cheese. And what happened to the other mouse? We don't find out why it was pulled backwards.
I know. There's some dark... this has a bit of the feel of The Secret of Nim in here.
Yeah,
like
it does.
Scary things happening to terrified mice. Like,
and then becoming like intelligent.
Yeah, Julia has more than... When she's upgraded, when she's changed, she has more than a little Miss Brisby in her, I think, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot... She's a furry thirst trap.
Oh, yeah.
And that's according to the person who designed her. But yes.
Oh, okay.
Let's hear about this mouse experiment.
And the winner is Mouse J37.
Nerve. All my money was on K52.
I like that joke.
Now how am I
Funny
going
joke.
to buy your birthday present? I mean, how will Santa buy your birthday present?
I'm afraid you're a few reindeer short of a sleigh, Pinky. Now, to the operating room. As you know, Pinky, I have been planning to run for president. But the American people don't trust politicians who fly solo. Despite my obvious brilliance, there's one thing I've overlooked. My first lady. Nancy Reagan's pearls. Hillary Clinton's pantsuit. Jackie O's hat.
Are we doing a spell? Are we witches now?
Be quiet, Pinky, and hand me the final ingredient. Barbara Bush's memoir, written from her dog's perspective.
So all very funny up front.
Yeah, that's great. I'm shocked there wasn't a Michelle or Melania reference in there, but it's actually all the references that they would have done if they'd written it in 1996, like that. And I think too, I had totally forgotten until doing the quick note take on this, was that Reed Harrison, when we interviewed him, that's how I remembered it. He wrote a 1996 episode of Pinky and the Brain about Brain running for president.
Yeah, I was going to say this is not the first time they've used this premise.
Yeah, which is why it's a good zig instead of zag that they take the direction in it. But I think that was Pinky's mistake in the first one, that you can't, like he says, you can't run for president if you're a bachelor. You can there's been times where people run again as a widowed man, but everybody thinks you're weird if you're a single man running for president.
And you need children.
You need children. You got to have, or great-great-grandchildren in the cases of our... No, he has grandchildren, not... I think it's kind of BS that Kamala Harris can just run with stepkids. She doesn't have...
Stepkids?
She has
I voted for
stepkids.
stepkids.
Yeah, you voted for a stepmother, not a
As
real
a stepkid, I don't want anyone in my kind in office. It's not good. Yeah, well, like one thing I noticed with the writing is very true to the characters' voices. One thing I noticed with Pinky is that we've done a few Pinky and the Brain cartoons for this, and like a part of Pinky's personality was being in love with like pop culture obscurities.
Yes, yeah.
Does not happen at all in this series. Remember like Neil Sedaka and getting Regis Philbin's like autobiography and things like that.
Yeah.
All these like weird tacky things about pop culture Pinky was in love with. It's not in here, and I was just thinking like, are we witch's brain? That he could have referenced some like ancient like thing about witchcraft or something from
It's
the 60s or
true.
70s or 80s.
That's the major thing missing from Pinky, is that he's not into ephemera of like the lowest of low pop culture. Like he doesn't bring that up at all. He should be saying like, well, I'm staying up to watch
Like,
Carlson Daily.
This is just like Hocus Pocus, Brain.
Yeah.
Or something. I mean, that would be an ancient reference for a kid now.
Yeah, you're right. It's weird he doesn't bring that up ever. Well, it was also strange. They did it in the very first episode where it begins with Pinky watching America's Funniest Home Videos on TV. But the rest don't begin with Pinky watching television, which is how many episodes of Pinky and the Brain
It's true. It's a good device. I don't think they have time for it, but it's an element of Pinky's personality that I miss, even though he is just as stupid as he always was. Just being obsessed with pop culture and television and stuff was a very important part of who he was in the older stuff.
I like that they have the joke in the first episode too, where he's like, I've had time to reflect on this, and this is a bad relationship, and then Brain just hits him, and he's like, all right, yeah. Though this episode also shows that an important balance in the Brain and Pinky relationship is Pinky can never be hurt or insulted by Brain. Brain can treat him horribly, but it has to just roll off of Pinky, and Pinky's fine with it. If you have a normal person around Brain to say, this is awful, it makes Brain a much more evil character, even when he just does the same thing.
Yeah, but actually, this is an odd one because Brain is very unlikable in this episode, when normally he's fun, you can root for him, and even though he's mean to Pinky, he gets his in the end. And this one, it's just like, boy, Brain's a dick.
Yeah, he really is. I mean, I guess when you start with the idea that he is splicing a mouse without its consent to only make it into a tool for you, it is a dark premise already.
Especially with the gender politics, where it's just a man manipulating a woman or forcing a woman to do things.
Yes, yeah. Well, her transformation is really funny though. I also like that they do keep kind of another detail from old Pinky and the Brain I like is that it's like a Hot Wheel with a hair clip on it that holds her in place. You need it needs to be them putting together stuff that a mouse could reasonably get its hands on.
And they in the past they always had to find clever ways, how do they break out of their cage this time with things around the Acme Labs.
The only thing I didn't like that they added to Pinky and the Brain really was that they gave Brain a tragic backstory kind of thing.
They didn't spend enough time on it.
Yeah, they could have done a little more, honestly.
That could have just been an episode, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we get the newly transformed J37, who is now known as Julia. And again, there's some furry stuff happening here. And I went to...
She quickly puts on clothes, at least. Yeah.
I went to Genevieve Tsai's Twitter account, and she retweeted someone who had done kind of sexy fan art of Julia, naked coming out of the tube.
Oh my.
I mean, not with human parts on her or anything like that, but she is curvy, and yes, I can see there's some furry stuff going on here.
I like her design. I like the asymmetry that comes from her having the ear clip that's kind of a earring. I also really like once she puts on her pantsuit, I like that she has the black choker. I think that's just a sexy design for characters to have one of those choker things.
We're hot for Julia now. It's official. But yeah, let's meet Julia.
Hello, world. It's an honor to be here.
Wonderful. J37, from the moment I set eyes on you 20 minutes ago, I wanted to edit your DNA against your will. Ask you one question. Will you be my first lady?
Yay! Fine. But I am changing my name to Julia, keeping my own bank account, and I already told my parents we'd go to their place for Thanksgiving.
Perhaps a tad too much, Hillary Clinton.
How romantic.
All right, pay attention. Here is my plan.
What's all this?
Oh, are you wedding planning? Brain, I don't mean to be dramatic, but if I am not your best man, it will literally kill me.
No, and stop interrupting me.
Oh dear, someone's being a bridezilla.
That's a great reading.
That's great. And that is a very TV reference for him to say that, at least. So I guess you don't need to know the TV show Bridezilla to know that.
And the Brain could have made that Clinton joke in 1995.
Yeah, it is exactly the same as would have been done then, which I think that should have been your warning, Brain. If you didn't want her to overshadow you, you shouldn't have included any Hillary Clinton pantsuit. Get Michelle Obama's digging trough or whatever from her garden of carrots. But
it's good that they really zeroed in on Pinky and the Brain for this series, and honestly, they could just reboot them on their own.
Just do 13 episodes of Pinky and the Brain.
Because as much as I like the Warner Brothers, what I've learned about characters through the course of doing this show, and just studying stories and whatnot, the best characters are the characters who want something the most, which is why we did Tiny Toon Adventures. Plucky's the best character because he always wants something.
Yeah,
he's striving, he's desperate. The Brain obviously wants to take over the world, and Pinky wants the Brains love. So like they both really want something really bad, so it's fun to watch them. With the Warners, it's like they don't care. They shrug at the idea of like having any sort of desire or need or want.
In that episode we just had, like multiple times, they're like, I guess we're in a story.
It's like, we got to kill 8 minutes, don't we?
Yeah, that it's so different. For Pinky and the Brain are so an amazing idea of just that modularity. You can just you can put them anywhere and their drives always work. You can have them meet any kind of type of character. They can be in a fantasy story, they can be in a sci-fi story, or they can be they can be the red baiting episode, like with the HUAC stuff. That was so great. They work anywhere. I'm shocked that one didn't happen in the original run.
Yeah, they could have easily fit that in. But yeah, like you're right, it's very modular where like there are certain scenes that have to happen, but you can put them anywhere.
Yeah.
But at the center are these two characters who both really want something.
Yeah, they all, and they're just funny in every situation. Like Brain, and you love seeing Brain angry. It's just hilarious.
And this one, I feel like it could have really been expanded into a full episode, because like how Brain and Julia rise to power is just like skirted over in a montage. And I feel like that could have been like, let's see them on the campaign trail. Let's see like Pinky being the campaign manager with his very baggy sports coat he's wearing with like the floppy sleeves.
Brain's many failures as a candidate could have been expanded into like a full 5-minute chunk of an episode. Yeah, it's the Pinky and the Brain are damaged by not having a full episode to deal on, especially like they proved when they got their own spinoff. They can work in the 22-minute format perfectly well. Like they almost have to be too sped up, or their plans can't be as involved as they could be if you have to fit them into like an 8 to 10 minute sketch.
And they find out like the quickest path to the presidency is to become a senator first in the special election in Iowa, and Brain is going to be the charismatic dark horse, is what he calls himself.
I love that. Yeah, that he where's he getting the money for the don't ask too many questions. But I also love seeing him just fail the kiss the baby test. Like, it's like, this is why, Brain, you can't be a president. You can't hug the kids. You can't be around disgusting things.
I think like one of these early Pinky and the Brain shorts, they have Brain in his like human suit, which is just like a man's body but with the brain popping out of the collar.
Yeah,
but after this, they're like, you know what, people will just interact with these mice and
He's
it's fine.
Just a mouse. Yeah, it only really worked in the Red Scare episode. Yeah, when he's pretending to be, actually he becomes a senator in that one too by taking over his body.
So yeah, we get a little montage, and like there's this like, kiss the baby sort of politician thing where the baby throws up on Brain and Julia is comforting it. So Julia is clearly like the more personable, the more quote unquote human candidate here compared to the Brain.
She's born to be a politician, just so much better at it. She picks up the second Brain fails at putting the shovel in and at digging something up at a new business. She instantly like, shovel, boom, photo op, I'm right there.
And then we cut back to campaign headquarters, and Julia becomes a senator as a write-in candidate with 97% of the vote. So
that's pretty great.
Brain didn't get one vote.
I was curious what they don't talk about political parties, but when we get to the debate later, she's in red and the other one's in blue, which a normal CNN thing would say she's a Republican in that case, but it also just feels like this definitely feels like a response to Hillary Clinton's loss, and just like, when are we going to have a female president type conversation, and also that they could do a whole running for president thing and not bring up Trump once. Like, he's not mentioned once in this.
That is a plus, I will say, for this show. They get the Trump stuff out of the way very, very early, and then they just kind of don't talk about it anymore, which is great.
Yeah, even in the last song they do of the First Lady song, Melania is just said like, and Melania Trump, boom. Like, there's a lot of bad jokes you can do with Melania, and they didn't bother.
I was waiting for, like, she's a porn star or whatever crap. But yeah, they mostly get it out of the way. And then in this scene, we have like a parody of Rachel Maddow called Raquel Mad Cow.
Sure.
And there's like what I consider like a pretty bad joke in this scene where she's like 3% of the votes went to a candidate called Updog, and she goes, "What's Updog?" And it's just like,
yeah.
What is the joke? Is the joke that she's saying it? I don't understand.
Well, it's like a prank call kind of joke. Like you'd say, I've seen it in like Twitter replies of saying like, you don't even talk about Up Dog. And then the person replies, "What's up, dog?" And they're like, "I don't know. What's up with you?"
It just feels like street humor, like it's a joke that you've heard, and
no
one wrote it, but it's just a joke you could put into a thing.
Yeah, I guess it's just Rachel Maddow getting like prank called.
Not savage enough with Rachel Maddow.
Oh no, there's lots of reasons to be mean to Rachel Maddow, but I will say that the designers did. It's just a very, even before she said the joke name, I was like, well, that's Rachel Maddow. Like, boom.
Yeah, all the caricatures on the show are so good.
Yeah, and they fit with like they I think they also understood that Animaniacs or a Warner short did character designs different than humans in the Pinky and the Brain world. Like the Pinky and the Brain world humans, I think, look distinct from the ones that appear in the Warner shorts. And like this Rachel Maddow one does look in the same way that they would have designed, say, a Tom Brokaw parody in 1996.
I think so. So in this next clip, Julia is finally senator.
I can't believe I didn't get a single vote. They wrote her in and wrote me out.
Well, at least you're married to the most popular candidate in America.
Wait a minute, Pinky, that's it. Are you pondering what I'm pondering?
I think so, Brain, but do we really want to taste the Rockies? There are so many moose up there.
Yeah.
No, Pinky. Julia should be president, while I am the Svengali behind the scenes. Like Dick Cheney, Rasputin, or that Svengali chap whose name eludes me. Yes. A fidget spinner factory in America's heartland. The perfect place to begin your presidential campaign.
I must say, Brain, I thought you would be more upset. I know how much you wanted to be president.
Not at all. As your husband, I'm here to support you. Here, I even took the liberty of punching up your speech.
Thank you, Brain.
I want a relationship like you two have. I've tried online dating, but I keep getting catfished. I mean, yes, she is gorgeous, Brain, but how do I know she's even real?
And it's a picture of a catfish on his phone.
And Brain gives him nothing. He's just like,
he just turns around.
Yeah.
I do enjoy that.
There's so many good. I think they do a good job writing all the Pinky. I think so, Brain. Like I think my favorite one. Are you pondering what I'm pondering? I think so, Brain. Nothing. And I just that was just a good one. But I do like Brain as a Dick Cheney type is perfect for him.
Oh
like,
yeah. Just pure evil and a real puppet master.
And Brain rarely gets a good joke line like that. I'm like, and that Svengali chap whose name eludes me. Like I love that line. Yeah, and it makes sense for him. He could control her, but he's too evil for her. He's just too. Also, the fidget spinner factory. I like that as a setting. That's very funny.
And yeah, so Julia takes the stage, and she's really good at politics because she butters them up immediately with local sports references.
The Tar Heels versus Wolfpack. That means she's in North Carolina.
And so Julia, she's reading Brain's speeches, stumbling on the part about teaching children to build bombs with their tiny hands. So normally, like, the Brain's plans are very like fantastical and absurd, but this one, she's just like, we're just going to make children build munitions.
Yeah,
there's nothing like silly about it.
Which Julia has quite a good understanding of politics, which is obviously children build your bombs that kill people, but you don't tell people about it.
Yes, you use euphemisms like tiny hands are perfect for building a better tomorrow.
Yeah,
which feels like a really democratic thing to say.
She does feel very democratic. Yeah, though the woman she's up against later also feels like a dem. It feels like it's just two democratic candidates running against each other.
And there's a very symbolic thing that happens here where she tears up the speech. It's like, it's time to stop speaking from the brain and start speaking from the heart, so we can see the separation between the two.
I love that. I love it tearing apart. When she tears it, in the close-up of her hands, you see Brain in the center of the tear, and then the shot of Brain's face with the two sides of the torn thing in his eyes. Like, really good composition there. Like, the writing's good, but I do think the animation in moments like that really brings up the themes that are there much more clearly than just words being said could.
And Pinky is rather astute because he's like, it seems like she doesn't need you at all anymore.
Yeah, that's so great. And it is a joke about men not being able to let a woman be successful. Like though Brain isn't sexist enough for that to fully come through. Like Brain is mad that she took his plan, not that a woman's place is to be supporting him. It's not about gender.
A woman was just necessary for this plan.
I think Brain in general is pretty like, well, there were episodes where he fell in love with someone, but generally he's a pretty like asexual guy. He needed a wife to the point that if he wasn't in a heterosexual marriage, he couldn't be elected president, so he had to be. Meanwhile, Pinky has moved on from horses to falling in love with a catfish.
I miss his horse girlfriend, Farfignugan.
Oh, Farfignugan, man. See,
that's a reference.
That's a reference.
That's a reference.
Yeah, I guess him saying like "Taste the Rockies" is kind of a reference.
To Coors?
Yeah.
Coors.
So many moose up there.
So now it's time for.
Of course, Pinky loves fidget spinners too.
That is true, yeah. And if you think it's like a fidget spinner joke, they were making jokes about Pogs in the 90s. Come on,
it totally fits.
Yeah.
It's not an unfair change.
So now it's time for Plan B, which does not involve being crushed by a crate of fidget spinners, which they are. They're crushed, but they make it inside somehow. And now it's the night of the first presidential debate, and Julia Brain is about to take the stage.
Ooh, sorry it took so long. The barista kept saying, coffee for Pinky, and I was like, no, it's for Julia.
Thank you, Pinky.
Pinky, I need to have a chat with Julia. Do your best impression of colony collapse disorder.
How do I do that, Brain?
Be gone.
Off I go!
Brain, I don't like the way you treat Pinky.
Huh, I give Pinky's life meaning, like I gave your life meaning.
You've given me the power of speech, but you'll never control me.
Oh, on the contrary, I already do. During your procedure, I installed an obedience chip, just in case my machinations went awry.
You monster.
Genius.
You. Genius.
Why, thank you, Julia. Now go on stage and join the debate.
Yeah, I mean, the sexual politics of this section is harsh, too. I guess it makes it more evil. If Brain was doing this to, you'd feel pretty bad if he was doing it to Pinky, but doing it to your wife and making her praise you, and finally a woman's doing what I said because I'm electroshocking her brain. Like, it's dark. It's dark.
It's like torture, like psychological torture and actual torture.
Yeah, no, Julia's destroyed by this. Like, and she could have been president and is destroyed by this man messing with her head and forcing her to praise him. Like, it's so dark. And but Brain's like, yeah, I'm evil. Like, I'm an evil genius. This has always been who I am.
And I created you.
And same with her being a normal person is why she goes like, your relationship with Pinky is cruel. Like, you're awful to him.
I think like one of the first things we see of her, how she's different than Brain, is like in the campaign montage of like getting off the bus, and Brain does something like not to knock Pinky off the bus, and she helps him.
That's right. Yeah.
It's just like a tiny moment. They don't really like underline it.
She even thanks Pinky in that clip there. Yeah. And also a good little joke about, writing names on cups. Couldn't do that joke maybe in 98 you could, I guess.
Were they calling out your name in 98?
Maybe not. I think people weren't doing...
We were using numbers back then, right?
Yeah, I do think of those as post 9/11 jokes of like, my name's not blank. Like, I know our friend Nina has had to go through that quite a lot.
It happens with Bob too.
How with B-O-B?
Because it just sounds like Ma. When you're in a loud restaurant, like Matt, Paul, Tom.
Why are you mumbling your name, Matt?
I say Bob. Bob. And then they look at me like I'm stupid.
But in this case, they did the name correctly, but Pinky's like, no, it's for Julia. I love that.
So Raquel Mad Cow is back, and we see Governor Tanya Walsh. I like her big toothy grin.
Yeah, she's great.
I
love that design.
Senator Julia Brain is asked about corruption, and Brain is trying to answer for her. Basically, like, I would simply let the most intelligent individuals make the decisions, like Brain, of course. And she's fighting it. She's obviously in a lot of pain. And she ends her little statement by saying, "Get out of my head!" She's screaming it.
She's going insane. Like, it's also shows that Brain is totally just being selfish here, because if he thinks she's going to win acting like this, then he's an idiot. Like, it's just about destroying her, really, it seems like.
He's letting his need for control override his need to desire to take over the world.
And she also brings out undesirables, which is like a reference to Hillary Clinton.
All right.
Talking about
a whole basket of them, right?
Yeah. Which, probably a dumb thing to say. Maybe don't. Just, you can, that was probably a mistake on her part doing it. So we get that reference too. And even having an undesirable pop up and say like, hey, guns there.
I do like that guy. But let's hear the plan falling apart.
Yes. As president, I'll send
Undesirables to the moon.
Hey, lady, I'm an undesirable, and there's no way I'm moving to the moon. Because there aren't guns there.
Here's what you think, you well-informed voter whose opinions are
Wackier than a quackalack.
Things are getting out of hand. Time to regain control.
I've been manipulated by a tyrant. But isn't the real tyrant high fructose corn syrup? That's why my platform is to
Eat the children!
Big finish! Yay!
So Julia's letting this whole crowd know that QAnon is actually correct.
She's right, yeah.
And she's ready for a baby feast.
That undesirable, I think, probably really likes her after that. Or no, wait, no.
Maybe that was Q.
She has been Q this whole time. I mean, based on the twist at the end here, I think she could be operating as Q. This is all. But man, all the great screaming by Bamford there, just like this frothy freak out by her.
I guess like listening to this again, it's just like the one negative part of this episode is like I really hate Brain.
Yeah,
he really
just
sucks.
Bad, and he doesn't get a comeuppance. I guess maybe he'll get a comeuppance later.
If he ever if they showed a sliver of him feeling bad about this, then maybe it would have been like a little better. But yeah, he just becomes really unlikable here.
He should be like, did I go too far? Like something like that. This Brain is a little too mean. I do really love the animation of her final bit of the freak out is impossibly as this tiny mouse picks up the entire podium and flings it through like three walls. Yeah.
And like scampers off into the distance.
Yeah, it's a really great freak out. And her crazy mouse face kind of reminds me like when Ratigan goes crazy in Great Mouse Detective.
Maybe they even reference that, just the way she like grinds her jaw with like jagged teeth.
Just quality mouse animation all around here. She is a Disney mouse hanging out with Warner mice like Pinky and Brain.
She is very Disney looking. You're totally right about that.
Yeah. I mean, she fits the attractive girl Disney style design too.
And the governor has no response to this, but instead gives out free hats.
I love her hat cannon. That's so great. I'm with Pinky. If someone gives me a free hat, I might change my vote.
People don't want free hats. They want tax credits that can help pay for hats.
Yeah, that's right. But only if you've operated in a hat store for 3 years after going to a hat college.
If your parents were hats, we can talk.
It's a hat testing every means for that hat.
And then, so we cut back to Acme Labs for the finale of this cartoon, and Tanya Walsh is getting sworn in as the first female president.
Just like a man would.
And what did the Brain learn from all this? If you want to do something right, you got to do it yourself. He immediately asked Pinky to go get him some coffee. So just becoming a hypocrite like immediately.
It's exactly why you keep failing, Brain. And I love too how Pinky puts his fingers over all these different coffee packets and then grabs a salt shaker and
just like shaking salt in like an empty mug.
Which like Brain, maybe notice that he's doing that. This is why your plans fail, Brain.
And Pinky's wondering what happened to Julia, and as Brain is like discussing this, we see Julia as like a regular mouse, like scampering through this, frankly, very beautiful snowy scene in the forest. It's very nice.
Yeah.
And he's saying, she probably got half of her cerebral cortex blown out when the thing exploded. Like, well, wow, Brain, you're being very callous. You just like blew up this lady's head.
You caused permanent brain damage as far as you know. And he's like, isn't it kind of tragic? And it is. For a little second, I did think like, oh, what a horrible tragedy. Like she just is this written off the show with a destroyed mind. But then it's a much better turn after that.
Yeah, like the brain assumes she's no more intelligent than a field mouse, and we see, her scampering around, and then she goes into a log, and then when the coast is clear, she knows no one is watching. She becomes the more human-like mouse and like basically scans her hand on this thing and like goes into this log, and she has her own secret base where she's monitoring Pinky in the brain.
I love the design of that secret base. It's great.
It's awesome.
You're supposed to leave it wanting like, I want Julia back. Let's see the next Julia thing for her revenge. And it's a good just origin for her because she's not evil before, but she even has like a little face tick after to show that like what Brain did to her has turned her evil. Like now she's just driven by revenge, and her brain is literally been damaged, so she's not so nice anymore either. Like, I love that.
It's a good moment too, because at the end of this cartoon, the same thing we do every night, Pinky, and she finishes the line while watching them. So it's a good thing, but she didn't come back in the season.
I guess there's already a second season planned, so hopefully she gets her revenge, and Brain finally gets his comeuppance. That maybe you're right. Why he feels even more evil in this is because he doesn't get his comeuppance. I guess, his plan doesn't work, but he doesn't like even get injured by her. If she like trampled him on the way out or something, that'd be another
something. Should have just like fallen on him or something, like a spotlight falls on him after she runs away. Something like that. He usually gets some comeuppance. You're right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the Pinky and the Brain cartoon, and now we have the third cartoon, which is Starbox and Cindy, directed by Katie Rice, written by Jess Latcher, and frankly, there are not going to be any clips for this. I do have 2 clips, but because this is purely just driven by the animation, there is dialogue in it, but it's incidental because it's a little girl babbling about things.
It's fun. I love hearing a little girl babble and how they did it. But this segment is so good. And it made me like why I said every one of them should have had the third just be a 2 to 5 minute short that's just original. And
something completely new, yeah.
And challenge them to do something new. Like I wonder at what point the new ideas got to come in, but I'm really glad that this is the best of them. Like the things that go bump in the night it's fun. But it's just like a one gag of just eyeballs and but the gnome one is funny, but it's mainly just funny because John DiMaggio is just a funny voice screaming as a gnome.
I think that was my favorite, but because it was John DiMaggio screaming at people. This one I did like a lot. I feel like the premise is fairly limited, and they couldn't make a lot of these because you have a character whose dialogue is incidental and a character who can't talk.
Yes,
and the character's desire is pretty one note. Like I have to get to the button on my ship, so I feel like they can't make too many cartoons around that.
But it's a fun one-off for sure. Yeah, the gnome, I think the animation in the gnome one is great of just all the ways they can find a new way to have a gnome pop out of someone's mouth. But this one, just Cindy and Starbox are just so cute together. And I love, like, not just that it's animated really well, but it's animated different than the other ones too. Like the outlines are different, the color palette's different.
It looks a lot like Katie Rice drawings, especially the Cindy character. Like definitely looks like something out of her sketchbook for sure.
That close up on Cindy's face is like, that's the most Ren and Stimpy looking shot in the whole series.
It's we can hear the theme song at least, which sets up the premise. Actually, I had to turn subtitles on because it's kind of garbled, like a lot of the singing here, but it's fairly fun.
Planet-eating warlords, legion of grimlocks, conquest of Earth led by dire commander Starbox. When he finds a planet where beings are rife, we descend and consume all the sentient life. When he sends the signal, we start the invading. Until then, we're waiting, we're waiting, we're waiting.
So the whole premise for this little bit here is that Starbox is this alien like army commander, and he is like leading invasions of planets. And he's going down to scope out Earth to see if it's ready to invade. And unfortunately, he is about 3 inches tall, and he is captured by a little girl who thinks he's a toy.
I love it. Yeah.
The entire thing is like he's got to get to a ship and hit this button for everyone to invade.
It's so cute to have this adorable little girl who then has this just angry gray thing who like is real squishy and tiny, going like, and she has no clue what it's doing.
And she's
it's
playing
a great combo.
She's playing with the toy like very rough, but in like a very accurate way, where she's like, she doesn't know it's alive. She's just like smashing it into things, and well, she probably knows it's alive, but she's a kid, so she has no idea what's going on.
Man, the way she like thoughtlessly goes like, like puts him out the window and he smashes his head on the windowsill, like, but yeah, all these great alien chorus singing about how they're gonna destroy the Earth and once he finally presses a button, like that's such a great intro. It builds up the scariness of this giant threat, which makes it even funnier to see him demeaned so much by this little girl.
And I think Starbox, his design is like evil E.T.
Yeah, very evil E.T. Yeah, just that they found an extra way. Like you start with the classic gray alien, but find extra designs to give to him, and also that it comes through. So much of this is dialogue based. Like the other two are so dependent on the voice actors. Here it is the opposite, and it really. I mean, clearly there was a writer for this, but like this is really where the animators got a chance to shine.
Yeah, like I really wonder how this was written, because it's like, did you just write down 6 ideas for gags? Because it feels like everything is carried by the animation. Just
totally.
Like so many things happen that are just purely animation. We can hear a bit of the talking from Cindy, which it sounds like they just recorded a little kid on an iPhone, because the quality on this is way lower than the actual recordings of the other voice actors.
You can hear the kid walking around the room as she's talking.
So here's a bit of Cindy.
Here's your favorite dress. Get in there, please. I hope you feel pretty. Do you want a cookie? Cookies are sweet. Cookies are so sugary. I want to tell you something. I love you.
Aww.
I had a dinosaur dream.
So yeah, that I love you thing is just a very like intricately drawn like Ren and Stimpy close up of her face, like way more realistic than she is throughout the entire cartoon.
It's so great. It is a very sweet moment that's instantly then she just tosses it aside and goes like, I had a dinosaur dream. And you always hear like her, like she's so proud of her dinosaur dream. It's very cute. I also love that there's just a tiny bit of world building as he's like, go to your home, and puts him in the dollhouse. You see he has like plans on the wall.
Yeah, so he's been there for a while.
And I like, get in your dress, please. Like
poking him in the butt. Yeah,
just shoving. And Starbox seeing the cookie like squish off his face too is so funny. God, him as this just like sour face having to deal with an adorable Moppet who's smashing him around is just, it's a funny combo. Would it work for like 4 more cartoons? Maybe not, but it's really great in this one.
Yeah, you can see what they're doing by just experimenting with these new characters. And like he eventually, like his entire plan is to like catapult himself outside, and he does. I like the bit with the bird, like the big fat weird bird, which no bird violence thankfully, but I love how this is a weird description of how bird-like it is when it's just like pecking him back in the nest. And then the first time he escapes from the nest, the bird like just weaves him through the nest like he's like a twig or something.
Yeah, the weaving of him, it's so great. And that the bird is like fat and weird and has a dumb face, but it's just kind of like thoughtless, like, no, go back. And also when he sits on it, eggs come around him, so it laid eggs
around
on
him,
top of him. And also just the animation of his run just is so cool and actiony,
and like vaulting over toys and stuff. Yeah, it's really neat. And I like there's a kind of a sweet moment at the end where he falls out of the nest, and then Cindy catches him, and he's like sort of relieved to see her, but then she like squishes him again.
Yeah, so for just a second he's like, maybe you're not so bad, and then she has squished him and turns him into the spinning toy.
Yeah, spins him like that old spinny toy.
I love that. And then she's like, la la la, like just so great that she's torturing him again. He gets only a second of, but not unlike with Brain, you don't feel bad when violence happens to him because his plan is to kill everyone, to kill billions of people. So it's like, all right, let him be tortured. I don't care.
Yeah, it's a cute ending, and it's a nice little cartoon. And again, it makes us wish that they did like more new stuff on here.
And same with like experimenting with looks too. Like just like for this one episode, it looks like this. It doesn't, and I think that was the way they did with the Bump of the Night one and the Gnome one. The rest, they stuck to how they look for all the other Warner or Pinky and Brain ones. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, it feels a bit like Freakazoid in that way, where they would experiment with different looks.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the Gnomes Gargoyles parody they did looked very different.
Toby Danger.
Yeah. I think that was the best one-off they did the whole season, and it's just really great. I also do wish though that the voice direction. It's too bad Andrea Romano retired, because I saw
Andrea.
I saw in the credits, that's when it hit me like, oh yeah, she was their voice director for all of Animaniacs, and so. But she's still with us, but retired, so she can't do it.
The voice acting is great because they're all like such seasoned professionals, and they know these characters so well. Like I think the voice acting makes the writing like 25% better.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I'm sure their director is a skilled director, but at least the core cast probably is beyond direction at this point. They're like, I know what Yakko says.
Yeah.
I've been him for 30 years now.
Are you going to tell Maurice LaMarche how the brain sounds?
Yeah, it's like, actually, I think the brain would go up on this bit. Like, no, he wouldn't. You just have to be like, well, you know what, sir? Yes.
He really is turning into Orson Welles.
I wasn't meaning to make a Frozen Peas joke there, but yeah.
That'd be amazing if Maurice LaMarche was like in the booth correcting the director who sounded like Pinky.
Oh, that would be great. God. Man, but yeah, this was the best of the run for sure.
And I'm looking forward to more.
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll be coming soon with less production problems, but I mean, again, conflicted about, another reboot, conflicted about the fact that the original people were not even really contacted or really brought on for any reason.
Yeah.
And outside of that, I did like it. But again, I wish there weren't these like downsides to it.
Yeah.
But I do like the fact that someone spent money on animation for streaming.
Yeah, that they actually spent the real money on, and it gives me hope for what I feel like HBO Max will spend even more on the Tiny Toons one from the same Amblin production. I hope that Ruger could get invited to that one in the gang. It's like he's just as much part of Tiny Toons exists because they hired the pup named Scooby-Doo guy to make it. Like he is in the DNA of that, especially Plucky. It's like but I don't know what this Hollywood game is being played with him, but like just at the very least, just for PR purposes, write him a check, have him come in for like a week, just so everybody can just feel good about it overall,
How much money are you already spending on this thing? You can't write Tom Ruger a check.
Yeah, it just feels very, it's a bit of pettiness that doesn't need to be there, tarnishing a good show, but yeah.
And what I hope is that this will start a new animation arms race, because I watched all of Animaniacs, and then I'm in the middle of the show Amphibia, which I've been enjoying, and it's a very well animated show, one of the best animated shows Disney has made this decade. But I'm like, boy, this show doesn't look very good anymore, because I just watched all of this slightly better Animaniacs stuff. So what if Disney was like, you think Animaniacs is good? Wait till you see what we're gonna do. So what if the new animation arms race starts like it did in the 90s, and it starts again now? That would be amazing.
I hope it'd be nice. We'd have at least a few good years before whatever the Power Rangers of the 2026 will be.
It'll just be more Power Rangers, honestly.
Yeah, actually, nothing can be a new thing. It'd just be an old thing. So yeah.
We're going to bring back the original Power Rangers, reboot them.
Well, I mean, that Tommy actor will show up for anything. So.
And the Yellow Ranger, not alive, so she's not going anywhere.
Sad, yeah.
So on that happy note, thanks for listening to What a Cartoon, everybody.
Yes.
We hope you enjoyed this mega long episode about the new Animaniacs cartoon. I did not think it would be this long, but we had a lot of complicated thoughts about it. So thanks for following us on this long journey. But if you want to support the show and get all these episodes 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. Sign up there to get just that, but also access to everything behind the $5 paywall. That includes everything we've done behind that paywall for the past 3.5 years. The most recent miniseries we've made, along with all the other ones, was Talking Futurama Season 2, Part 2. That is almost wrapping up right now. It'll be all finished by the end of December, and that is 9 new episodes of Talking Futurama just for people behind the $5 paywall. And and there are so many other miniseries you probably haven't heard if you're not on the Patreon at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. And there is also a $10 level. When you sign up for that, you get all the $5 stuff naturally, but also access to one mega-long podcast once a month just for patrons of that level or higher. And what is that, Henry?
Why, that's the What a Cartoon movie podcast. Just last week, and I can say it because it posted this morning at the time of our recording this, was Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Me and Bob talked for almost 4 hours about that stop-motion Aardman classic, and that is just the most recent of a giant back catalog of us doing the same type of treatment we do for animated series, but for different feature films. Wallace and Gromit this month. Next month, the end of Evangelion. Oh boy, are we going to have fun there. And a giant back catalog, over 100 hours, 2 years worth of monthly podcasts, in addition to all of the $5 things Bob just talked about. You get a huge bang for your buck at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons, while also supporting me and Bob doing this as our full-time job. So please consider subscribing if you haven't yet.
So I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. And my other podcast, by the way, is Retronauts. That's a classic gaming podcast about old video games. Find that wherever you find podcasts, or go to patreon.com/Retronauts. Sign up there for 2 bonus episodes every month.
And I'm Henry Gilbert. Follow me on Twitter at HENREYG. You'll stay informed on what's going on in my life. And if you're following both of us on Twitter, you really should be following the official Twitter account of the Talking Simpsons Network for this show and Talking Simpsons, at Talk Simpsons Pod. At Talk Simpsons Pod on Twitter. Keeps you up to date when new podcasts for What a Cartoon or Talking Simpsons go live on the free feed, on the Patreon, when we have the schedule go out for what we're going to be doing. All that cool stuff. You will stay informed if you follow at Talk Simpsons Pod on Twitter.
Thank you so much for joining us, folks. We'll see you next week for a Garfield Christmas special, and we'll see you then.
You haven't noticed anyone strange come into the shop lately, have you?
This place sells donuts for $6 in an abandoned brass factory, and we're only open on days it rains. So, like, everyone who comes in here is strange?